Hello, everybody. How's it going? We meet under not so great circumstances today, unfortunately. Tonight, um, we've got some bad stuff to get through today. We're at a little bit of maybe you could even call it a low point for this season. We're at maybe a little bit of a low point of this rebuild as a whole when you consider the rebuild post Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner. Yeah, I think we're kind of a little bit of a low point right now. People are not happy. People are concerned. And worse than all that, the thing that I picked up on, people are bored. And all these emotions not leaving us in a great place. So we're going to sit here and talk about it. We're going to sit here and talk about it until there's no more talking to do. But let me just say, I know how you guys are feeling right now. I get it. I empathize with a lot of it, and people are not happy right now, and I totally understand why. But we're going to try to get to the bottom of this. I'm Brendan. I am joined by Brandon of the Hawks Nest. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good. All things being brought into play here as far as consideration goes, but doing all right. Glad we've got at least a little bit of a turnaround quickly this week, so we don't have to dwell too extra long, like you say, on a loss that has many of us kind of down into a low point of the year so far.
All right. So we do have a game to talk about. We do have the Sunday game to dive into here. But first, we should go over some news of the last couple of days because there's actually quite a bit. And this stuff really matters because we have a game in just a couple of days. So we got to be on top of this stuff. So to go through it real quick, go through the highlights here. Um, Not expecting K9 to play anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Oblique injury that Pete Carroll said was pretty serious. Pete is saying he'll be back before mid-December. I'm not completely convinced, but the important thing is I don't think we're going to have him for this game at the very least.
It's a big loss, Brendan. He is a dynamic rusher, and when you have an offense that can't say nothing of really find consistent drives on a consistent basis, but can't find oftentimes the end zone with six sets of hands and 10 sets of eyes, it's going to be a bit of a loss having a guy that you're not able to call upon. He's been one of your touchdown makers, and you don't have a lot of those on the squad this year so far. So it does hurt an offense that's already right now struggling to find its footing.
Jarek Reed tore his ACL out for the season. He obviously wasn't playing on defense, but he was a key contributor on special teams, maybe our best special teamer this year.
Yeah, if you're looking at Seattle and where they might be appearing to want to start to move a little bit, for instance, free safety, his development back there behind Quandre Diggs, and we've got decision to make with Quandre Diggs this offseason. That was going to be a big factor of that. He's not going to be able to go out there and train throughout the offseason. He's going to be rehabbing. Their outlook for him to be able to, be back there and let's say if they were thinking maybe he could take over eventually starter, I think that's got to dim just a little bit on the back of this news. He's been a really good player for us out of the special teams. I think he has the second most amount of special teams tackles on the season in the NFL. But this is where we're really looking at with him is can he be a guy to eventually have been that guy to take over for Quandre? And so now that becomes a little bit more of a question mark, and the potential for us to draft a safety raises maybe just a little bit higher with it.
Right. And DK Metcalf now has a toe injury, so he just cannot get away from the little nagging injuries this year. Held him out of practice today. We don't yet know about his game status. I think he'll play, but it's just one of those years where he can't quite get all the way there. It seems like there's always going to be something with Metcalf's injuries this year.
Indeed, it does. Toes are rough too, so that's changing direction, all that for those receivers, corners, be running backs. These kind of injuries really hamper them as much as any other position. And he's got the hip, and he's had ribs, which are hopefully by this point getting to a better state. But luckily, he's been able to still fight through these injuries and perform really well this year. I've been very happy with what he's done for us this year, especially with sometimes our struggles to find him a high volume of passes, making them especially catchable passes.
So that's the bad news. We do have some good news, though, and we need it. We need every little bit of good news that can be found right now. Geno Smith, limited in practice today, expected to play. There seems to be some optimism around Geno. And I mean, say whatever you want to. but Geno Smith can at least make that Thursday game watchable, because
Mhm.
I really am not excited. I really would have a hard time getting excited for watching that game with Drew Lock at quarterback.
I as well. Through I'm sure your subscribers and comments that you see that there is a contingent of the Hawk fans out there that feel like Drew would potentially be a better answer than Geno and what he's done this year so far. I know you and I don't ascribe to that belief, but that is definitely one that exists out there. But I'm definitely, and I think Geno showed last week why. There's us, Geno. Those that are in Geno's camp aren't trying to necessarily say he lights the world on fire, but he is our best option to go out there and win football games on Sunday right
Yeah.
now.
I'll tell you though, the Drew Lock people are pretty quiet right now. I haven't
They
heard a
got
lot
quiet
about
pretty
them.
fast. They got quiet pretty
Yeah.
fast. They did on that note. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. Tyler Lockett looks like he's getting better. Looks like he's pretty much past the hamstring. I mean, as much as an older player can get past a hamstring injury, right? But
Yeah.
he's looking better. Jamal Adams looks like he'll be good to go after missing Sunday's game. Kobe Bryant is back, which is important now because we don't have Jarek Reed. Kobe Bryant
Mm.
might actually find a role here. The big one, though, the one that should get some people really excited, if there's anything to get excited about right now, Abe Lucas would have been a full participant in practice today if there was a practice. And there's some reason to believe he'll be able to play Thursday. And if not, he should be able to play next week. So we are very close to getting Abe Lucas back on the field.
Yeah. I think it's going to help to get Lucas back. I think we do have to acknowledge a little bit of, even within the recent offensive struggles we've had, that Stone, Forsythe, and Peters have been playing pretty good football for us at right tackle in recent weeks. But nonetheless, he is what we're hoping to be our answer there at right tackle now and into the future. And he is the best right tackle you have on the team. Certainly, as long as that knee's working right, he's going to give you the most mobility of any right tackle on the roster, and his ability to move around out there and get out on some of these blocks that we need to get to. That's about more the lineman moving in space. Not to mention Chase Young. I don't want old Jason Peters with his rocking chair out there trying to hold up against Chase Young over the course of an entire game. I would expect that you're probably going to see them flop them out of it, though, Brendan, where you'll get some Peters, you'll get some Lucas. I don't think they'll probably just go 100% Lucas right out the jump.
Right. That's about it for new stuff. I don't think there's anything other than just the injuries to get through right now. Obviously, it's a quick turnaround, so there's not really going to be time for too much of anything else. Curhan did make it back to the practice squad. He was a surprise cut to make room for Peters, but Curhan does find his way back home. So I like that. I mean, Curhan's a nice guy to have around. I know he's not really a good player, but there are some good things about his game, and I like having him around.
I do too. He can play guard, he can play right tackle, and he's functional in those roles. He's not going to set the world on fire, but he's not going to be a turnstile either. And it's, if you can stack up a deep enough roster to have those guys on your practice squad that fit to that role, that's a nice thing to have.
So, since there's really nothing else to talk about, let's start talking about that game on Sunday. Right.
Okay.
And I mean, it's not fun. And I'll tell you, it was especially not fun watching it at a watch party put on by Norbcam and the Fans for Good at Stimpy's Bar and Grill. That part was cool. That part was fun. They ran it very well. So real quick, I want to give a shout out to Fans for Good and Norbcam for putting on the watch party. I think I actually cameoed for about a minute on Norb's stream during the game.
Oh, did you?
So
You swing in there and go, "Hey, what's up?"
No, he actually pulled me up. He wanted to ask me about something.
Oh, okay, nice. Did you have a lot of people, fans? They give you high fives and whatnot through there?
What's up, Brendan? There were a few. Yeah, there were a few who were there. So that part of the game was cool, but not too much else was all that cool.
No, Brendan. We have ourselves another very, very embarrassing loss, albeit this is a different one a little bit by the final score. To me, it pretty much is just as embarrassing as the opening week loss. You lose to a much less talented team. You get beat in the X's and O's once again by McVay versus Coach Carroll, which has been something that's been a commonality since 2017 when he walked in the door there. And it does get very frustrating, not only have it happen here twice in a season, but have it happen continually year after year. And I know we went against them technically 2-0 last year, but that was with Wolford at quarterback in one of the games, and then Baker Mayfield arriving halfway into the season, becoming their starting quarterback there in the other one. So I can't really be like, oh, well, we solved it last year. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. And that team fell apart last year from an injury standpoint, the Rams. So tough to watch. Tough to watch. We already had our measuring stick against the Ravens a couple weeks ago that told us kind of whether or not this team could be a contender. This is the type of game that you come out of, Brendan, going, are we even good? And I don't know if I have a good firm answer on that one right now.
Yeah. I mean, make no mistake, this Rams team is in a better position than they were last year when we played them. Definitely better, but they're still not a particularly good team. This is a team that they lost to the Bengals when Joe Burrow was doing his Ryan Fitzpatrick impersonation. This is a team that lost by multiple scores to the Packers. This is a team that needed overtime to beat the Colts. Like, this Rams team, this is not an example of McVay's best. This is not what McVay is putting at the top of his resume if he one day seeks employment elsewhere. This is a average at best LA Rams team, at best. And I don't even think they're average. So our roster is better than their roster. So when you lose to them twice, what does that tell you?
Well, that's right. And they're rebuilding too. I mean, you put it in a kind way there, but they're rebuilding. That's make no mistake about it. And I talked to their content creator for Rams channel last week, asked him straight out, and I go, just tell me. I think they are, but you tell me, you inform me. Yeah, we are. He didn't have to think or pause or think about it. So you're a team trying to win a division title. You're a team right now this year trying to go out and say you can be a contender who can't even be at a rebuilding time with two different swings at them. I think that there are some things to take away from that more than just saying, kind of like you talked about last week when we were talking about this, of just, well, it's just, McVay. And no, there's something to draw away from this tangibly that's really frustrating and is a big problem at play here that's going to carry forward into the future. And I don't know that the Hawks have a lot of answers for it, quite frankly. Seems like in the case of McVay and Donald, Brendan, we just have to hope they're going to retire as basically our best solution to the situation.
Right. So let's start. I mean, all sides of the ball, kind of the same picture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, all three phases, we start the game out pretty well. Things are going pretty well. And then at the end, everything just fell apart. Offense, defense, special teams, I feel like that's all the case. So let's just start with the offense. Let's start with this offense because we got off to a nice start. You march down the field, punch it in the end zone, touchdown. You're off to this. You're feeling good. And then the next two times you get the ball, you get in field goal range, you kick a field goal. Myers makes a couple of long ones. You're feeling like, okay, we maybe we're not a great team, but we found ourselves enough to be able to beat this team. Metcalf got off to a nice start. Lockett made some plays. JSN made some plays early. Walker looked good to start. Now he got hurt quickly. But overall, that first half, the offense was successful. 3 times they got the ball, and they scored all 3 times. And then the second half hits, and you muster 3 points. You don't score in the last, I think, 25 minutes of game action, if I recall. Maybe it was like 22. But everything just kind of dries up and dies. And if you were to try to pin the blame on some entity for why the offense starts so good and then peters out like that, what would you start with?
Well, obviously the 15 to 20 scripted plays you put together offensively are what you plan to run out the gate, and you're going to work on that throughout the week and refine and get the details on that just right, and to be able to run those plays, at a high level. And they seem to be run those really well. But this has been a commonality that we've seen throughout this year in a lot of the games where offense will start out with that plan A, and then there's not a plan B. And when it comes down to reasons why it starts to fail out, again, the reasons start to become the same. And this is where we go into there being a bit of an issue here that goes beyond just one game or this season. Being that, again, you see a lack of creativity as the game goes along, a lack of use of the outside run game. We continue to hammer. I tell you, Brendan, I'm not sure if we're running Bevel, Schottenheimer, or Waldron's offensive attack. I'm not totally sure on that one. I think it's Waldron's, but it looks a lot more like those other guys' offensive attack than it looks like a McVay-led offensive attack. And the stack fronts, which had started to give us tremendous trouble in the Ravens game and then were reemployed last week, despite us getting that win against Washington like we did, they still brought those up against us as well. And guess what? Rams employed that as well against us this week too. Stack fronts all across the board, gave our offensive line fits, gave Geno Smith and certainly Locke when he was in there for a short spit fits as far as realizing when they're coming and not coming. It's not about sending blitzes. It's just that they're showing these big stack fronts of all these guys up on the line of scrimmage. It freaks out the offensive line. It freaks out the quarterback, and we don't seem to have a handle for it. We'll call our protections like the blitzes are coming, and then the guys drop out. And now you have guys in protections for blitzers that aren't coming. And now you get things like single blocks against Aaron Donald because you've been burying in for the blitz that never comes. And it's stuff like that. And it's that chess match that we're losing on a weekly basis, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't really understand why. It shouldn't look this hard sometimes with this much talent as you have on the football field, but especially going against this Rams team that really only has Donald on the defensive side of the ball. That's really all that scary. Just my opinion on it, though.
Right. I read one tweet yesterday that basically laid it out like Waldron sees his offensive line start the game well. He gets cocky and he just assumes the offensive line is going to be able to handle it. So he starts calling more long developing plays, and then the offensive line fails. And it's kind of like this cycle right now where like offensive line does fine. He trusts it enough to start doing more long developing plays. So he does that. Offensive line gives up plays, starts failing, and it just kind of keeps going around and around like that. And at this point, like, we're only getting one guy back. This isn't a month ago when we only had one starter on the whole offensive line. Everybody's back except for Lucas. So hard for me to believe that Lucas is going to come back and completely change this and make everything okay.
Agreed. I think that the excuses start to run out here really fast for Waldron as we go through the season. This was supposed to be a strength of the team you leaned on. We didn't know where the defense was going to land out. We knew that there was maybe going to be a bit of a up and down there because of where they were coming from last year. But offensively, we expected at least a top 10 unit here, and you're not even in the vicinity of that as it stands right now. That's unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable, especially for how the health has held up this season on that side of the ball. Where is the use of Noah Fant? Where is the understanding how to use this $6 million tight end that you decided to bring back on that high salary, but you don't seem to have a way of targeting him, but maybe once a game? It's DK Metcalf like gets forgotten about for about 2.5 quarters throughout the course of football games for some odd reason. Again, there still is no willingness to run outside horizontally. There's like 2 pitch plays a game. And I know that one, you didn't have a good 1-2 to Charbonnet, which that's, okay. It goes bad one time, but that doesn't mean you never go to it again. Look at all of their runs this season, Brendan. You just do for me an estimate in your mind. If you took all the runs this year, how many of those runs do you think would be over the A gap, running right over the backside of the center? If I took 100% of the runs of the Seahawks this season.
Too many. It would be, just A gap.
Just A and B gap. We'll go A and B gap. So inside runs, inside zone runs.
You got to be pushing like 85, 90%, right?
You got to be. And it's too much. There's not enough diversity in the offense. And what it allows defenses to do is make it easy to play. If I go to you and I know that you're 10% of the time going to run it outside, okay, you might hit me on one of those 10% plays, but you don't run it enough to really hurt me. You'll hit me on that play, but you won't hurt me. I know if I just concentrate on taking away those A and B gap runs and I tighten everything up in there and I keep you closed up there, I've shut your run game down because I know you're running that 90% of the day. We come back again and again to the simplified nature of the offense and how it's run. It's this way on the defensive side of the ball too. And it's not doing our team any favors. It really isn't. And they're leaving advantages on the table on a weekly basis. How many fly sweeps have we run this year? 2, 3, maybe. Why?
I can't even remember 3.
And why? Brendan, just give me, by all God means, please, just give me the reason why. Why wouldn't they run it? Why would they refuse to run this thing that is a staple of the McVay-led offense and has been for years? You sign up for the McVay scheme. You say, hey, we'll take that up off the top shelf, the McVay special offense. Yeah, give us one of those. Okay, great. This offense comes with fly sweeps, bubble screens, flood zone concepts. Yeah, we don't want none of that. Okay. It also includes outside zone runs and pitch play. No. We don't want any of that either. Just give us the inside run part of it. Yeah, we want that. And then we're going to turn it. Yeah, just give it to us. That's what we basically have done with this. And I know we're supposed to try to explain this, Brendan, and have a maybe more creative understanding of like, well, here's what's happening. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what Waldron's doing. I don't understand why the offense looks like 2018. I don't understand why it's such tough sledding when it is so very talented as the unit is. And you're right. The excuses have fallen away. There's nothing else to land on other than this isn't good enough. This isn't good enough for what you put together. It'd be one thing if they were under talented and you were trying to get by with some of the talent that we've seen some of the offenses come through in recent weeks, like Washington, but that's not the case.
Yeah, and again, in this game, I mean, again, I watched it in a bar with 100 people, so I didn't have the best possible way to judge every single element of this game, but I don't see us throwing the ball over the middle very much. I still don't. Like,
No.
I brought up the stat last week. We are last in the league in throws over the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Gino and Kenny Pickett are like 1A, 1B of the we don't use the middle of the field, and it's really hard for me to believe that's Waldron because of where he comes from. And it's hard for me to believe it's Gino because Gino's very successful on throws over the middle, which we also talked about a little bit. So is that, I mean, because again, we talked about how Pete doesn't like going over the middle because he thinks turnovers happen there. So it's kind of hard to figure out where this comes from. Like we're playing this game again. I remember playing this game back in 2018, like trying to figure out, okay, where's the genesis of the problem? And you're trying to untangle it, and it's getting really hard to really understand this because again, Geno Smith is really good when he uses the middle of the field, and he never does it. He almost never does it. Like, how can that be explained?
That's where I feel like there's going to be an equal explanation on the offense and defensive side of the ball for me at this, and where I'm starting to reach to quickly arriving towards a conclusive. And I'm going to wait till the end of the season to get to this state, but my belief is starting to grow into of, because like you just intimated about Carroll not wanting to throw the middle of the field defensively, I don't want to blitz. These base philosophy things being things that will hold us back because they're in his DNA for not wanting to do it, yet you need to do it. You need to do it. And I just think that when it comes down to us looking at something that looks ever so complicated as this, Brendan, like you're saying, like we try to find the genesis and we try to unpeel for, and it starts to get really complicated, but I think we can get very simplified if we dial it to something that is, what's the more maybe simplified explanation here? That Waldron's come from McVay and had amnesia overnight for the type of offense that he wants to run that brought him success, that got him this job, Brendan? That's kind of a convoluted explanation. Or Coach Carroll forces these offensive coordinators to fit to his designs. And that's why Schottenheimer reportedly inherited 70% of the playbook as he did when he walked in the door. That's why we have a quote from Coach Carroll 2 years ago saying, yeah, we really like Waldron here. He's really open to doing the things that we used to do, that we like to do. What the hell does it matter about what you like to do? You brought Waldron in to execute his offense. What you like to do? You're a defensive-minded head coach. What does it matter what you want to do offensively? You haven't produced an elite offense in your entire time in Seattle. Why should anybody be looking at you and saying, you're the one we've got to take our notes for what we do offensively speaking? Because he believes himself to be so brilliant, I think, in respects of, I'm both a genius defensive-minded coach and I'm a genius offense at the same time. I've had so many years through this sport. I have such a great understanding of each side of the ball that I can do basically both. And that's what he's doing, Brendan. He may not be calling the plays, but I'm starting to get more and more of a feeling like there's an overarching Carroll kind of factor that's being brought into play on this because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. It makes no sense otherwise when you look at it and you go down the track.
Okay, so that's kind of the big picture with this offense. Just
do you see the same way, by the way?
Yeah. I don't think there's any other way to see it. Any other way? I mean, like, we as fans who are on the outside can only speculate on most of this stuff, right? Because we just we have no way of accessing the information to know for sure with any of this.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to admit, no other explanation makes any real sense here. Like, there's nothing else you can come up with that makes any degree of sense here, I feel. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating, man, because I've been banging my head trying to understand it as well, watching every year and watching every game this season and looking at the all 22 and trying to make it, make some sense of it. But it just, I come back again and again, man. It just, what am I missing here? You're not trying to run your offense at all. Why aren't you running your offense? And why does it look so simple? And why is it the defenses know what's coming? I mean, KJ Wright said it in his deal. Like he was saying is like on one of his post games, he just sort of said it outside of his mouth. It's like, yeah, these plays aren't it. I can see him what they're running prior to the play. And he sort of was like trying to like quickly say it, and it just sort of it flippantly came out of his mouth a little bit and went, but he's seen the same thing. It's like it's all here on bright display. It's on, but they don't make any adjustments, or they don't have any adjustments to be made because they can't be complicated, because they can't pre-snap confuse anybody on either side of the ball. And they're completely unwilling to do so. And it's costing them big time on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm. All right. So to drill a little bit deeper into the offense, to talk about some of the more specific elements of it, because there was some stuff that worked fairly well. Like I said, that first half was good. I don't mind kicking field goals every now and then. I don't mind having to occasionally settle for 3. We have the kicker that's supposed to be able to make all those kicks. So there was some stuff here that was pretty good. I think Geno Smith, he missed some throws, but overall I thought he played fine. Obviously, he gets hurt in the middle of this game. And by the way, I want to give a lot of credit to him for trying to go back at the end of that game and giving us an opportunity, recognizing that Drew Lock just wasn't going to be able to do anything in that circumstance, and just deciding, you know what, I'm in pain. This doesn't feel good. I might regret this later, but I got to go out there and give my team a chance. And he did. I mean, he made 2 big throws on that drive, and nothing but gratitude to him for that.
100%. Geno's got a lot of shade from the fan base this year, and he's done something back-to-back weeks now, bringing you back in the game when you need a final drive. And as I was saying last week, I feel like he started to grow that part of his game to where people have to go from saying, oh, well, when you need a drive at the end of the game, you can't count on Geno, to going, hey, there's a good chance he can make this happen. He's done in the past and done in the past recently.
But let's talk about the injury here real quick, because this, I mean, obviously this play is going to stick with you as a Seahawks fan, the play where he gets hurt. So to my recollection, on that play, Aaron Donald is getting blocked one-on-one by Phil Haynes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what you saw as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just wanted to verify that. So we're blocking him one-on-one with probably, I would say, our worst offensive lineman. Do you think that's fair?
Brown's been dipping pretty hard over the course of the season. Brown's probably worse. Maybe. And Damian Lewis might even be worse at this point. I don't know. They're both might be on an equal footing of bad, to be honest with you. But okay, let's just say yes for the sake of yes. He's not good. How about that? Yeah. He's bad. Yeah. He's not a good guard in this league. Yeah.
So the Seahawks have been trying to get away with treating Aaron Donald like he's any old player for a decade now, basically. Like, that's been kind of their thing. They're going to treat Aaron Donald like he's Quentin Jefferson. They're going to treat Aaron Donald like he's Atba Rubin. And they're going to just be like, well, come what may. And for a decade, by some definition, I guess we kind of got away with it, because as much as he did disrupt plays and get sacks and get tackles for loss and do stuff to our offense, on those plays, he didn't ever really hurt the quarterback. I mean, like the one where he hurt Wilson, that was just like their hands hit. That was kind of a fluke play more than anything. That wasn't the result of like, oh, you didn't block him.
Well, but here's the thing. You single blocked him in that situation too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm willing to acknowledge that their hands hitting each other is different than something like this.
Okay, but hold on. Well, let's pull it back. Donald sacked your quarterback more than any other quarterbacks he's sacked on any other team in the NFL. And not by like a small margin. He is absolutely has more tackle for losses, more quarterback hits, and more sacks than anybody else, right? We can acknowledge that, right?
Yeah.
We're 5-10 in our last 15 games against the Rams. You know, is he breaking your quarterback? No, but did you sort of like get away with some things over that time period where like he hit your quarterback and Russell Wilson a lot of different times really hard, and other quarterbacks would have been broken on those hits? He was tough enough because Russell's kind of an Iron Man in that way to get up and shake it off. But it wasn't a matter of like, well, you weren't really getting away with it. You were just lucking out at the fact that this didn't happen. This is what would happen as an eventuality. It's just that you kind of lucked into it. I'm not trying to step on your point with it, but like you could see this coming is what I'm kind of saying.
Yeah,
you know what
but
I mean?
By some definition, Pete's like, phew, I keep getting away with it. Like maybe in his head, that's how he thinks about it because he's not getting hurt. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of how he feels about it. But anyway, so here we are a decade later. We're on our third, fourth offensive coordinator who's had to deal with Aaron Donald. And finally it happened. Aaron Donald gets a free hit on Geno because Haynes doesn't touch him, which seems like it should be impossible. How do you line up in front of Aaron Donald and not touch him? That seems really hard to do, but Haynes found a way to do it. He hits Geno full on, probably should have been a flag. I will admit that real quick here, by the way. It could have been a flag a couple different ways. It wasn't. And even if it was a flag, it doesn't change the fact that Geno got hurt and missed the next 3 drives, which ended up being huge in this game. So a decade later, we are still trying to get away with treating Aaron Donald like he's just any other player. It's the equivalent of playing the 2001 San Francisco Giants and pitching to Barry Bonds like he's just any other hitter.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, it's okay. We'll give you the normal set of pitches we're going to give anybody else. It's cool. It's cool. If you get a home run, good for you. You know, we're not going to do anything to try to take that away from you because that would be unfair. That would be unsporting. So, I mean, here we are. And finally, it actually resulted directly in no other way to take it, a quarterback getting hurt. And it just kind of blows my mind that we're still here after a decade of doing this over and over and over again. And now here we are. We did it again. And this time, someone really paid the price for it. So, I mean, can you make any sense of the strategy at play here with Aaron Donald?
No, it's like a lot of things on this team. It defies explanation. But here's where this is that fast approaching opinion that I'm really starting to drive towards really quickly, which is that the adaptation and change is not in the bag of this team. It is not who they are. It's not who Coach Carroll is. We have our plan A. We trust our plan A. Our plan A is something that we are married to. We've given a blood oath and a sacrifice on the back of this plan A, and shall never be a plan B or C or D. It will always be simply just plan A, and that is all we will ever apply. And you guys can squawk about it, but that's what we're going to do. And nothing happens from a data standpoint that I'm going to take in as a coach that is going to change it. I don't care how bad it goes. I don't care how much damage is done. I don't care how perilously close we come. Because you'd think after breaking Russell Wilson, literally finally being the man to break Russell Wilson for the first time in his career, maybe that would be finally after all those sacks and all those quarterback hits and all those TFLs and all those game plans he'd wrecked through the years, finally the light bulb moment. But it was not, was it? It was not. And it won't ever be. You are never going to double team Aaron Donald. I don't believe you're ever going to take advantage of the horizontal running game. I don't believe you're ever going to run fly sweeps. I don't ever believe you're going to bring in blitzing and really try to blitz. I think you're going to do this shell game thing and show us, oh, look what we're going to do this new thing. See, we're doing the new thing. But then when you pull the shell off and you look underneath, there's nothing there. And I'm sorry, but if we're going to talk about this team making changes in recent years and talking about it versus doing it, we're seeing a lot of talk. We're not seeing a lot of application applied in. The Donald thing isn't that. It's just insanity. Because here's the thing, Brendan. If over a 10-year period that you have adjust, you have this feeling like you described, which I think is accurate. We're going to do what we want to do. Okay. So then you think, I as a coach don't want to double team this guy. I hate doing that. It deconstructs our offense. It doesn't allow our offense to run well at all. Okay. Then you would think the next logical place would be going and getting a talented guard who could block that guy. If you're going to commit to that method, right? Wouldn't that 1-to-1 equal out the other? But if you look at the guard who was blocking Donald when Russell Wilson broke, if you look at the guard who broke Geno Smith when on that Donald play they're mid-tier guards. They're not big investments you've made into the position. These are JAG players that you're asking to block the defensive player of his generation one-on-one and then sitting there shrugging when your quarterback gets broken. It is absolute insanity. I'm okay if you double him 80% of the time. There's sometimes he's singled. I'm okay if you try to run the double and he splits it and he gets back there. But geez, for the love of God, at least try. At least try. But they don't. And I'm not going to excuse it away or say, well, you got this with that, with it. You should have had a game plan built around doubling him up. And it cost you this game. I think it's cost you other games too, by the way. If it hasn't cost you on the injury front, I know that it's cost you games. For instance, the playoff game a couple years ago, where I believe you single blocked them all across the board in that game too, at home. He wrecked your game plan. And I don't know, man. I'm frustrated by hell at it. I'll tell you that.
And it's important to note that this precedes Waldron. It even precedes Schottenheimer.
Yeah.
This goes back multiple offensive coordinators. So for me to believe that it's the offensive coordinator's fault, that's hard to believe when we've gone through 3 different ones over the last decade.
Yeah, it does. Especially when you have a coach in Coach Carroll, who's showing his willingness to impart his belief on the structure of offense and defenses and how they should be run after he hires these coordinators. He's not shy about telling you, hey, this guy's been a game record. Let's get him double teamed in your game plan. Make sure you build that into it. He's not a shrinking violent. He absolutely would be willing to go out there and do that, but they don't, which means that it is purposeful in not doing it, which means that it's stupid because you're not getting success off the back of this approach. And you haven't, especially over the last 6-7 years in dealing with this.
Yeah, and obviously you in the chat right now can probably hear our comments starting to go a particular way, starting to be framed in a certain way when it comes to Pete. Me and Brandon, we're both kind of starting to sour a little bit here. And it's important to understand why, because as a fan, when you're going into a season with a particular team that you're rooting for, I do think it's important to have realistic expectations. I think it's important to understand what you have. And you and I both get, the comments and the super chats before the season starts from people who say, oh, I think we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. And I think a lot of those people are often kind of goofing around a little bit. They're having some fun. I don't know if I doubt they actually think that. But the point I'm trying to make is us starting to kind of go south with Pete, because you can definitely detect it over the last, I want to say, month or so. Me and you have both kind of started to go down a familiar path with Pete, right?
Yeah.
We're starting to go down this familiar path. It's not because, we're not going to win the Super Bowl this year, so therefore I'm done with Pete. It's because this is a rebuilding team. This is it's an accelerated rebuild. It's going better than we thought. But here's the important thing that we're trying to figure out here. When this rebuild is done and we come out on the other end with a really, really good roster, like a better roster than this, and we actually have that roster that can realistically go win the Super Bowl, is Pete going to be able to do the things that need to be done to actually do it? And the things we're seeing right now indicate absolutely not. Not even close. That's the problem here. It's not that this team won't win the Super Bowl. Like, I'm totally fine with this year's Seahawks not winning the Super Bowl. Yeah. That would have been fine.
Yeah.
But where is the indication that this coach is starting to figure this out?
You're 100% on the button with this one, Brendan. And it comes down to, like you say, you can have the talent. You need the talent married with the right scheme and coaching philosophy. And there are a variety of philosophies, from how you double Donald, how you run the offense, and how you run the defense, where they're not taking steps forward and evolving. Offensively, like I said, it's looking like the old offense, which was pulled right out of 1987. Lack of pre and post snap motion, a lack of using the horizontal game in the rushing attack, A and B gap runs, and taking deep shots over the top. That's pretty, think about all the bombs away. And we completed some to DK and to Jackson Smith in this game, and tried to throw one to Tyler and tried to throw another to Tyler that was picked, and another to JSN down the middle of the field. That's what we are now. A and B gap runs, taking shots over the top. It's very simple. It's very easy. And it's very easy and simple to defend. That's the offshoot of it. There are a lot of these things starting to rise up on this team, where you're looking back to the coaching staff and going, okay, that's a coaching staff failing. Oh, okay, that's a coaching staff failing. Oh, that's a coaching staff failing. To your point, Brendan, if we went through this year and you were trying to use the outside fly sweep game, right? And you're seeing them actually work the carry in, but you're going, oh, linemen can't get out there to those reach blocks. We got to get better linemen in here who are more fleet of foot to get to those reach blocks. Get Damian out of here, get Phil out of here, get Evan out of here, get guys that can hit those blocks. But you're not trying to attempt those blocks. So we can't come to that as an excuse. If you were on the defensive side of the ball, blitzing and bringing pressure and showing it. And hey, sometimes you're getting hit over the top when you're bringing those pressure-based looks, and you're trying to figure out what's the right balance of blitz that we want to do. We're going a little too heavy blitz here. We're kind of new to this. We're trying to kind of figure it out. But guess what? You're not blitzing. You're dialing back into the same old soft zone coverages. So the bumps in the road, the ironing out of the wrinkles that need to occur here, are not the type of wrinkles that we would look to need to be ironed out for a young team finding its footing, trying to learn how to win, being that you're actually adapting these new modern principles. And instead, you're trying to reuse the old principles, which continue to not work as they've not worked for years now. And then we're supposed to hope now into the future that those old principles are suddenly going to come and come alive and start to work a year from now. I find myself very, very skeptical that that's going to occur.
Yeah, that's where the disappointment really comes from for me. That's the part that I'm struggling with because, again, I had no expectations of winning the Super Bowl this year. And if you as a fan did, that's cool, but I think you might have been fooling yourself. You were getting a little too far ahead of yourself there. This is a very young team. I like this roster. I think we have a lot of talent, but it's young, it's inexperienced, and sometimes on game day that shows up. Like, for instance, with Reek Woolen committing hands to the face penalties over and over again. 2 years from now, I don't think Woolen's going to be doing that. He'll have learned. Witherspoon over celebrating after making a tackle and getting a 15-yard penalty. 2 years from now, he'll probably learn he can't do that and he won't be doing that anymore. But when we get to that point in 2 years where we might have an elite roster, I want to believe that my coach is going to be able to take full advantage of it. And right now, he is either failing or he's taking aim at the target right in front of him, hitting it and expecting raucous applause for hitting the target right in front of him. Like, because our blitz rate is up this year, right? But it's all 5-man blitzes.
Right.
We're not using as much soft zone, but we're still using it a lot. We're using some fly sweeps, but by some, I mean literally like 3 in 10 games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that is it. And I think the blitz thing too is definitely the 5-man stuff tricks you a bit on it where, and I would say even, we started this talking about the blitz thing and being dialed up a lot, I think 7 weeks ago, where they were up around like 13th, 12th, 13th, even with those 5-man blitzes being a heavy amount. I think they've been dropping down now closer to the 20th realm in recent weeks. And so this has been backsliding further and further into that spot. And it continues to be more of the old same defense. It's still a lot of dropping off coverage into depth is where you're doing it. You're still leaving a lot of holes open in the middle of the field, like the Rams fell into in the second half. I know we're not talking about the defense quite yet, but that's what you sort of had happen here. It was more of what happened the first game into that second half because you dialed into more of those coverages that were soft and left a lot of room for Stafford to pick apart.
Other than that, I mean, offensively, the good news is maybe we won't have to hear as much Drew Lock talk going forward, I guess, after that. I think those people have learned their lesson. A few people in my comments said as much.
Well, and here's the thing too. There were some people that did own it on my comments too, which I like to see. I'll do the same on my standpoint. Me and Brendan will be wrong about stuff. We'll own it when we're wrong, and we'll say, hey, I was wrong about this one. We're not going to be right on everything, and certainly be plenty will be wrong about. The one thing I did hear was an excuse was like, well, he's just coming out there and he hasn't practiced all week. It's like, hold on. Geno Smith 2 years ago came off the bench against this same Rams team with 99 yards in front of him on the very first drive and went down and got you a touchdown in that game. So you don't get to do the thing of saying with Drew Lock, well, he didn't have a chance to practice that week. The thing. He looked like a rookie out there. And we're not paying $4 million for a guy to walk out on the football field and look like a rookie when we have to call upon him.
He honestly, given how the offense did nothing, you could almost say he looked like a punter. Like, he's not the backup quarterback. He's the emergency quarterback. And like you throw your punter out there, you would get about those results.
He did. And Waldron didn't help him, just like Waldron didn't help Geno through that second half in the play calling. I mean, why don't you have Drew Lock with some easy completions? He gets him to roll to the left on one, what was going to be kind of his early easy completion he gives him. And you go, why are you having him roll to his left and having to throw back across? That becomes a little bit of a higher degree difficulty throw at that point for Drew. You're just trying to get him some easy completions, even if they're short gains, to get him into a bit of a flow coming off the bench. But that was the combination of both. Him playing, bad and Waldron not calling a particularly good game. But yeah, this Drew Lock performance showed you why so many of us have been so much on, no, Geno is the right guy right now. He is the guy who should be starting. Drew Lock is not going to play better out there. And if you think Geno's got a turnover worthy problem, you think that's an issue, wait till you see Drew if you put him out in the field. And that's how that played out.
Yeah, and like I said, honestly, my respect and admiration for Geno Smith might not ever be higher than it is right now. Like, for him to go out there on that last drive and give us a chance, that could not have been easy. And he gave us a real chance, a chance that, as far as I'm concerned, your kicker has to come through on. So I know he didn't play a perfect game. I think he missed Metcalf on a deep shot that could have been a touchdown at one point.
Mhm.
But I thought he played solid. He played fine, good enough to win.
I even
And
like the DK throw. I even liked because at least there he's giving DK a chance and he's putting it out in front of him on the throw. Where with DK, so oftentimes this year he ends up eating up the sideline on the throw, or putting it, slowing it back up to so that DK's separation that he has on the route is eliminated, allowing the cornerback to catch back up. So I'd rather Geno throw with that type of throw because there'll be a lot of times he completes that pass with now DK having a chance to truly run under it with his speed. It was just slightly off just by a little bit.
right. Charbonnet, I mean, it's tough when you're expected to be the backup and then the starter in front of you goes down in the first quarter like that. I think he played, okay. I mean, there's not really a lot for him to work with, it feels like sometimes. And I mean, he did some nice stuff receiving, right? He's a good receiving back, we can say that, but not a lot of yards for him to get.
Again, he's got the same problems Walker has to deal with, where you don't have guys up front that are opening up any holes, and you're very predictable in your running game. So the combination of their inability to open holes in the defense, knowing where the run play is going to go, stifles your ability as a running back to have any open space to operate with or find any backside hole that might exist.
Anything else you want to say on the offense? Lockett, obviously, second all time now in all major categories for Seahawks receivers.
Certainly has long been the second best receiver in Seahawks history in my mind. I think he reached that stage even last year for me. So it was cool to see Tyler, grab that. No, we don't have an identity still here. This week 11 into the season, we still don't know exactly what it is our offense does good. They don't have anything that they can kind of still yet kind of hold on to. And I don't know why. With all this talent, I don't know why it's hard to find something that you can lean into doing well. But every week we seem to be just searching and fumbling and searching and fumbling, trying to locate what we can do offensively to find some effectiveness.
Let's go through some of these donos here. Russell Marqueux, thank you for the member 9 months message. What was up with them seemingly waking up almost immediately after Cup went down? I did notice that. I don't think there's a lot of meaning there. Like, I don't think we're going to start talking about how Cooper Kupp is a cancer to his team or anything like that. I don't think that's the case. I think it just was kind of a coincidence.
Yeah, I think coincidence as much as anything else. You do have at times playing Rams, Russell, where you're going to have two slots on the receiver at one time, and that leaves one guy on the outside. And I think in the case of Puka Nukas, he's now being pushed at times when Kupp's in there to the outside, where he's really at his best operating within the slot. And so Kupp goes out, he gets to go back into the slot full time, and he's been really effective in that role for them when they put him in there this year so far. So part of it's that. Part of it's also that you got very conservative in your defensive game planning. I don't know if you're trying to hold on to the game, trying to make them grind drives out or what you're doing, but you drop back into those soft zones, and the Kupp, and I think Stafford went, oh yeah, I saw this in week 1 for 4 quarters. I know what to do. And he did it.
Yeah, and Stafford played so bad for most of that game too. Like, you had him. You had him. Like, he couldn't hit the deep ball to save his life. He had 2 shots at it. He had the deep ball to Kupp and then the deep ball to the guy out of the backfield, and he whiffed both times really badly. So what were you afraid of?
Yeah, I think the thumb was definitely affecting him on some of those throws in this game, Stafford. He wasn't as pinpoint as he was in that first contest, but it speaks to how good the Rams can be and that they can have a Stafford at probably 92% and no Cooper Kupp for 2.5 quarters of the game in a rebuild season, and they still are able to beat you.
Seattle Big Patty Daddy, thank you for the $2. Got a weird feeling we're going to pull this one out. He, of course, means the Thursday game. It would be very on brand for Seattle to lose to the Rams and then beat the Niners, I guess, right?
It would. This team's unpredictable, so why wouldn't it fit to form with that? And, when it comes down to it, this isn't a talent issue. There could be a week we get where the coaching staff pulls their head out of the bum and goes, okay, let's let it loose. What do we got to lose here a little bit? Look at this game coming up with this matchup where Brock Purdy this year and a couple of matchups he struggled in. Browns playing man coverage and a lot of stack fronts, and Minnesota Vikings bringing a heavy amount of pressure-based looks to them. There's some methodology here to going after this matchup if the coaching staff wants to take that out, but it does require them, Big Patty, to go towards and in the direction of the thing they don't tend to like to do. And that's going to be the interesting part about this matchup from their standpoint, to see if they do pull that lever. That is one that it's like the big red button almost. They don't push the big red button. Don't push the big red button. You got to push it, man, if you want to get this win. So we're at home.
Yeah.
Crowd's going to be going crazy. Thursday night football. Our guys are going to be playing hard. Anything can happen, but
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about this later, but the way I put it was the Niners are going to try to do a lot of the same things that the Rams did, except the Niners have better players. So I don't know how this works.
I don't either. It will be interesting to see if the Niners are willing to do what's been really giving our offense problems in recent weeks, which is those stack fronts, because they do like to trust their front four, Brendan. They want to just run our front four and we'll drop everybody else in coverage. But that has been a recipe that's given our offense a lot of problems here in recent weeks. So kind of be the interesting part to see how this game plays out from that standpoint of things. But I could see it, man. I could see it.
Brian Stewart, thank you for the $10. Will you please both add closed captions so we can read on public screens? I don't know if we can do that for a live stream.
So Brian, yeah. So I looked into this, Brian. Thank you for the $10 donation on streams where we're running from Streamlabs OBS. If you're running from your OBS, Brendan, you can do it from within there when you go into the you go into the YouTube screen from within the live screen after it's created. You create the live account, then you go into the live, and then you can turn on closed captioning. So Brian, I've started to turn on closed captioning on, like, when I do my play on Sundays or any of that stuff. I can turn it on there. When we go through the StreamYard app, which we're going through right now, it doesn't have the ability to turn on closed captioning with StreamYard. When you use an outside software like this, it doesn't let us do it on this one. I will continue to look and see when they turn that setting on. But on our regular ones, both, Brendan, it's just in that, where you go into the YouTube studio and you're in a live stream event that's been created but not live. And you go in there and you can turn on auto stop and you can turn on auto stop and start. Right below that setting, there's a CC that you turn on. I noticed that they've got there, Brian. So I'm turning it on for all mine that are just non-StreamYard based. But unfortunately, of course, with ours, it just doesn't let us on that. I'll keep looking for it, Brian, though.
Also, how about fourth down fake punt runs? Did you see the Vikings fake on Sunday? Remember Schottenheimer, John Ryan epics? I mean, I kind of want to figure out our basic offense stuff before I start thinking about faking punts and special teams. Like, let's get the basics done first, and then we can go into the advanced stuff.
Yeah, I usually am a big trick play guy too, Brian. The thing I think I do find myself, though, in more alignment with Brennan on this one is just that you've got so much talent on this team. When you tend to go to fake punts or trick plays, it's because you're going up against a defense where you don't have a good enough offense to make any hay against them. And you don't. So last year, for instance, in the first 49ers matchup, we tried the throwback play to Geno Smith to DK down the field on the running back to Geno, then to DK. Then you had DJ Dallas trying to throw a touchdown pass in the end zone that was intercepted in that first matchup last year. And that was where you didn't have as much offensive talent. You're a young team, so you knew you were going to have to kind of, fake it to make it that game. This kind of game coming into it, I think like you feel like you can match up with them as long as you execute your offense appropriately. But that I am kind of with Brennan on this. We should be much better offensively, and we've got to figure out our footing here. We've got to figure out identity here, not even just to go get a Super Bowl necessarily this year, but just to find an identity for the future that we can build upon as we try to start to round ourselves into a contending state.
Yeah, I mean, how many times are we going to have 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3, and then we do a straight drop back? Not even play action. Like, honestly, we should probably be running the ball with Charbonnet anyway, but if you're not, then what? Can you at least do a little play action? What is with all these straight dropbacks? It blows my mind.
Again, too, it's the counterintuitive nature of this team, Brennan. You blitz well, we don't want to blitz. Geno's good on play action. Let's not run any play action, right? You run some bubble screens with effectiveness. Let's not go back to that. It's the nature of this team where they do the things they do well is not the things that they're necessarily going to go back to and do again. They'll sometimes just go on to other stuff. And I don't get it either a little bit. It's a little bit strange, but yeah, I like usually the fake ones, Brian, but the offense just, man, I want to see them find their identity here this last few games of the season.
Right. Taker, thank you for the $2. We'd be 8-2 if not for these 2 Ram losses. Yeah, and I don't think we would be a radically better team if we had just won those 2 games against the Rams. Like, I still view that Rams team as being very average at best, probably below average. But think about how much better we'd all feel with just those 2 games.
I think to your point on that, we're gonna end up at the end of the season, Brendan. I think we're gonna look at these two Rams losses a lot like we looked at the Panthers and Raiders loss last year. Going, those are two games we should have had. Those are two games that hurt, that you feel that sting at the end of the year. I don't know if they're going to prevent us from getting the playoffs. They could, but I do think that they're going to be ones that we're going to lament and go, that shouldn't have happened. Those games shouldn't have happened in this particular season.
Radu Turkan, thank you for the $4.99. I liked offense the first half, some pre-snap motions, Bobo screens, etc. Seems like we wanted to lose and just ran away from it. To me, it seemed like Pete. I mean, parts of it are, but I'll tell you, in that second half, we were ahead most of the game, right? We were ahead almost the entire second half. We ran the ball like 5 times and threw it like 23 times in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound like Pete to me.
No, I don't know if that's necessarily Pete there with it. I do think some of what he's talking about, the creativeness is on point, where it did seem like it becomes just more guys are lined up, no pre-snap motion, no manufacturing of quick, easy throws for Geno at that point. It becomes, as you were saying earlier, a little bit more of the deeper dropbacks and the longer developing plays. And that's going away from what was bringing you success early in the game. And maybe it's Waldron thinking, well, we do this early thing and we bring them up and then we hit them deep when they come up. But you just got to sometimes stick with what's working. And I did feel like they both offensively and defensively went away from things that were working early in this game, Brendan. And I don't know if it was necessarily, I'm not going to necessarily ascribe it to being that we were trying to just lean on the lead, but we just went away from it. Things were going well with it. We just did, and we've done that a couple times this year, both on both sides of the ball, and especially on the offensive side of the ball at times. And I don't know why. Some of it's the scripted play part of it, and you just knowing the details. Some of it, like you say, is the longer developing, doing different type of routes into the second half. But some of it's inexplicable.
But thank you, Radu. Yeah, there again. The first half was good. The first half we had the ball 3 times and we scored all 3 times. 3 long drives too, not just one 80-yard play. It was methodical, marching down the field, punching in points.
Yeah,
and it just got away from us.
It did.
HK Ace, thank you for the $4.99. Love the content, Brendan. Can someone please put the word into Pete to release Frank Clark and promote Bell? Well, we're about to start talking about the defense, and we're going to have some stuff to say about Frank Clark. I'll say that, but maybe he's saving something for the playoffs, but we need to make the playoffs first, right?
Got to get there to get playoff Frank. You got to get into the playoffs. Yeah. Man, yeah, he's not been good, and that hard to think. HK, to your point, that Bell could be playing worse than what you're getting from Frank as a player right now. I mean, it's he looks to me to be about 20 pounds lighter than he was when he was here last. I mean, he looks like a string bean out there, and I just am not seeing it from Frank at all. It looks completely like he's spent as a player.
Yeah. And I'm not terribly surprised by it, but him eating up all this snap time is not okay.
No, it's not. And you've got a big problem right now on your edge. Huge problem, because you have Darrell Taylor and Frank Clark, and somebody's got to eat up some snaps. And when we put those two guys out there, you're getting nothing from them on the field in either pass rush or in the run game.
Right. Okay, so on that note, let's turn the page to the defense, where once again, there is some positive stuff to talk about. There are some silver linings here for sure. This was a game where you held the Rams to under 200 yards passing and under 100 yards rushing. So under 300 yards overall. Those are winning numbers in the modern NFL. In fairness, like there was some stuff here that you can be happy about, but kind of like the offense, the defense breaks down at the end of the game. They give up 10 points in the fourth quarter, including the game-winning field goal drive, and it looks very familiar, right? That slowly marching the ball down the field, picking up easy yards, and ultimately just finding a way to do just enough to win at the end. And you're kind of just sitting there at the end of the game thinking, I already know we're going to give up these points. I just hope there's enough time left for us to go score when we get the ball back.
Agreed. I was almost in there thinking when they got like inside the 10-yard line and it was going to be a first and goal, I was like, well, why don't we just let them score here? At least we'll have a minute and something on the clock in our timeouts, and we can at least have a chance then. I was about that spot myself.
So Well, a couple things that I really want to draw attention to. The first is the pass rush, of which there was
Mhm.
very little pressure on Stafford. I don't have the official numbers yet from PFF, but PFR was not too kind. We had one sack on the first drive of the game by Mr. Witherspoon on the blitz. Shout out to Witherspoon, by the way. I thought he played a pretty good game.
He did.
And not too long after, we almost got another sack when Julian Love came on the blitz. So the little bit of QB pressure we get comes from the blitz. So naturally, we stop blitzing for most of this game,
Naturally.
and you get what you get. So, I mean, I know there's no answer, but why would this team stop blitzing all of a sudden against a team with a quarterback who has shown he can't really throw it deep? When he does, bad things happen. He can't hit it. Like, what are we missing here?
Well, somebody might say maybe Carroll was trying to lean on the lead that he had, small as it was, trying to think, I'll just grind this thing out rather than putting the pedal to the metal. What you just said, I think, is really the most accurate at the end of the day and leaves me most frustrated is I don't really have an explanation. It would be one thing if you blitzed and you were getting smoke showed over the top. But let me give you another play, by the way. The play, for instance, where Woolen got an interception. What were you doing? Oh, you had a blitz. I think it was a run blitz, turned into a blitz, but you had a
Right.
run blitz on the play. So, we do this every week, Brendan. Go back to the Lions game. Trey Brown. Don't blitz all game, right? Or you blitz once in that game. You get a crossing route. Woolen gets a breakup. Brooks blitzes, gets a stop on the Lions in that game. Let's go later to that game to a 2-play sequence. One play, Trey Brown, corner, blitzing off the edge, gets the sack on Goff, never sees it coming. Come back the next play, show the stack front to Goff, get him jumpy. He throws a pick six to Trey Brown on the very next play. Go to the Browns game at the end of the game. You're blitzing Jamal Adams on that final play. He gets the ball knocked off his helmet as he's blitzing. You get an interception. Game over. Why?
Yeah,
Why?
It don't make sense. It don't make sense.
I have no explanation for it. And I just sit here and I can literally just bang my head going, you guys have these great moments this season. You don't have a lot of great moments defensively this season, but the few great moments you have this season are almost all back to either just Devin Witherspoon balling out of control or you bringing some blitzes to force the action. And yet you refuse to go to it. Brendan, it got so ridiculous in this game that even the telecast picked it up. The stat trackers, did you notice that about midway in the third quarter where they posted up over the deal of Stafford when he was blitzed in the game versus Stafford when he wasn't blitzed, and the numbers were startlingly different? It's to that point where even an intern, 17-year-old nose picking intern in the truck is like, man, they do pretty good blitzing today. I should put the stat up showing this. This would be kind of interesting. Give me a reason, Brendan. Just give me something. Lie to me.
Yeah.
Lie to me, Brendan. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And obviously, part of the problem is that the linemen and edge rushers that we had in that game did not play that well. Leonard Williams was mostly quiet. Mafe had his first quiet game in a while, although I don't think he played bad, by the way.
I think they're managing his snaps too. He was not
bit, yeah.
because they had the Thursday night game, so they had to run him,
Yeah.
I think, more than they want to do, or less than they want to do for that.
In fact, I kind of have a theory that existed all over the place with this team, and I think we kind of got bit in the butt by it. I think that Carroll was playing a dangerous game, and he lost.
Mhm.
And now we're in a scenario where not only are we probably still going to lose to the Niners, even if we beat the Niners, it's not that big of a deal now.
Yeah.
Like, beating the Niners would have been a big deal if you had won this game. Now it's just like what you need to keep the season on life support almost. So,
Agreed.
mission failed.
Mission
But
failed.
But anyway, Woolen played a good game until he committed the hands to the face. And it was hands to the face. Some people were saying, it's a bad call. I think it was the correct call.
Mhm.
I'm guessing it's just an issue with him being, doesn't have a lot of experience in the NFL.
I think it's happening on Atwell there, right?
Yeah.
So you got a 6'4" guy going down to a guy that's about 5'8.5". So it's just, you think about trying to get down to that on a length to shortness standpoint. Woolen's new to the corner position first off, so his refinement on his technique is not going to be pure at this point. But it also is going to be tough to get down to that chest with his reach off of press, and a shorter guy's going to have a tendency to maybe get clipped in the face a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the annoying point is that he did this against Cleveland, and it almost cost us that game. And then here we are a month later and he's doing it again. But I do think that's what happens when you have a young team. You have a lot of young players that do stuff like that.
Sure.
And maybe in the next couple of years that'll be worked out of his game and he'll figure it out. But I do think that Woolen overall played a solid game. No complaints there. Derek Hall, 6 snaps. Derek Hall, 6 snaps. Frank Clark, 31. Well, if you're only going to play Derek Hall 6 snaps, just deactivate him. Like, what's the difference between playing 6 snaps and 0 snaps? Not a lot.
They'd have to bring another guy up off the practice squad. They don't probably want to do that. That would be my measure of my guess to it. But he's he's dealing with an injury, and the shoulder injury is probably still bothering him, and they're trying to, mitigate that a little bit. So like you say, I think is the management towards this next game thinking, well, we can do good enough with Frank Clark and Darrell Taylor off the edge. We can preserve Hall a little bit for when we'll need him for the Niners. So, there was a little bit of, I think, that going on as well. But it's all of it, I think, as to how you get to those two guys playing that many snaps.
Yeah. But my thing is, if you're only going to play him 6 snaps, just make it 0. Just deactivate him. Bring up Levi Bell. If you want to try to get away with not playing your better players, then call up Tyreek Smith or Levi Bell from the practice squad. Like, it would be one thing if it was like 15 snaps. That's a reasonable number of snaps. But 6? That just blew my mind. I'm like, he may as well not be on the team if you're playing him 6 snaps.
Yeah, it's certainly an oddity. I'll give you that. I don't know what to make of it either with it. And team seems to have a lot more trust and faith in Darrell Taylor and Frank Clark than I seem to understand why.
So that's a rundown of like some of the individual stuff, some of the guys who played good. I thought Bobby played pretty well. Again, there's one play in this game where you really notice, wow, that guy is slow now. But he makes up for it. He overall, I think, played pretty well. We stopped the run good for most of this game. They had a couple good carries with Freeman at the end. Other than that, we did a good job. Darrell Henderson had 6 carries for 1 yard to give you an idea of how effective we were in one area. But there's this one play at the end of the game that has stuck with me ever since it happened. So we are now, like 53, 54 hours removed from this play. There's one sequence that stuck with me. I want to, can I walk through this real quick?
Yeah.
So it's on the Rams' final offensive drive of the game. It's 2nd and 12. 2nd and 12 at the 34-yard line, I think. So the Rams are in field goal range, but it's a very long field goal with their kicker who just got there. Like, they have a brand new kicker, basically. So I'm sitting there in that bar and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is great. This is a great opportunity here. 2nd and 12. If we can force a negative play or a minimal gain or a no gain play here, then it's going to be 3rd and 12. And the Rams aren't really going to be able to think about the first down. They're going to be thinking about, we need to pick up a few yards for the kicker. So this is a great opportunity for us to end the drive here. If we can get a good play here on 2nd and 12, force 3rd and 12 or something like that, they're going to say, okay, we need to just try to get 5 or 6 yards for the kicker, and then we can get off the field. And even if they make the kick, which they might not because that's a long kick, but even if they make it, we're going to get the ball back with a ton of time left. We can go win this game. And at the snap, everybody on defense turns around and starts sprinting down the field like we're playing Joe Milton fused with John Elway, and he's just going to unleash a ball 230 yards down the field. And Puka ends up uncontested over the middle for an 11-yard catch, which is, by the way, the worst case scenario. Getting 11 yards on 2nd and 12 is actually the worst case scenario. You'd rather just give up the first down because now they can use even more clock.
Yeah.
So actually stopping them for 11 is worse than letting them have the first. But I see that play, and a lot of the good stuff that we did during that game just goes out the window for me because it's like in that moment, you decide I need to go into my soft zones again. And picking that moment when anything else would be better, like it would be better on that play to blitz 11 players and give the Rams a free touchdown. At least you get the ball back quickly. Like I would rather do that than have them pick up 11 yards. So that play has stuck in my mind ever since it happened. and I don't like it.
It was probably just kind of the personification of what was happening in that second half to a large degree too, with the passing attack and what they were doing, and that you started to open up those soft zones throughout a lot of that second half. And I think what it comes down to, Brennan, is that when times get rough, they fall back into their old habits, and the old habit is just fall back into soft zone. In times of we're unsure, protect against the deep ball. Even when there's other factors you think they would be taking into account, like you just mentioned, they don't take them into account. This stuff is being blindly done at times, and this is our philosophy. This is who we are. Outside data does not matter. It's not going to instruct us, and I hate to paint it this way, but you have yet to give me an excuse that's anything else differently that it could be. I have yet to see anyone else out there that's been able to provide an excuse of what it could be that's differently for why they would do this type of stuff. What was it after Cooper Kupp went out? And since you didn't cover Puka Nacua on the play, we were just so worried about Atwell burning us deep in that moment, taking the top off the defense. It was just so that he was the big, or was it Higbee? Or was it Skoranek? It just doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't add up to me. And at the end of the day, you don't win games by playing not to lose. You go and win the game. You go and try to actually take it. That's the modern NFL. And we play a style that's very much too often, in my opinion, leans back into let's play not to lose. Let's just play to just don't give up the big play. And the worry about giving up the big play to me is just one of the most ridiculous things in Carroll's thing of just like, you never give a big play. And it comes off at the cost of everything else sometimes. Everything else goes out the door in favor of this one thing. And it inhibits this defense. It's holding them back. It's making them underperform for how much talent that they have on it. You're having one of the best rookie years ever for a cornerback, and he's almost having to hold the whole defense up on his shoulders at times. Don't get it.
Yeah, and Stafford would struggle to hit a big play right now if he was playing against air because his fingers messed up. He can't hit. Like we saw those two plays. He had the opportunity to hit Kupp for a wide open 50-yard touchdown, missed him. Mm-hmm. He had his running back streaking down the sideline on, what was it? I think a wheel route.
Yep.
Missed him. Like he can't hit those throws. So what are you scared of?
Yeah. You would think that they would let that inform them, Brennan, but they don't read the room. It's like they come in the room with their plan, and whatever's in the room doesn't impact. They've got their plan, and their plan is the same plan that they apply for year after year after year, game after game after game, and it doesn't change. It remains the same. And I think we've reached a point where it's just you keep applying the same plan in the future. I don't care how talented a team you stack up. You're not going to be a contending team. You can't keep operating with the same old principles. And Coach Carroll told us this himself. He knows that. It's again, in 2 words, his own words are not fitting to what he said. I know I go back to that combine interview, but he finally gave you a little bit of honesty. And now it's like, well, did that combine interview just not exist? Were your words just hollow and you're just telling things to the fan base to placate them? Or did you actually mean it? Because if you were arrogant in your ways and you needed to change, and I try to present I went on to KJ Wright's show the other night and tried to present to him and ask him a question. I go, hey, what has changed about this defense really over the last 2 years other than the run fits? And he starts talking about run fits and bear fronts. And I'm like, we don't run the 3-4. We're not running bear fronts. Yeah, we have it in our bag to call upon, but we're not calling upon it. What has changed about this defense? Nothing. You slightly blitz more 5-man blitzes. That's just about all you've done. And you run a couple, we run a quarter half and not a cover 3 and and you get all into this nerdy semantic talk about this coverage defense, this soft zone defense that's just a little bit different than this other soft zone defense, but they're all soft zone defenses at the end of the day, Brendan. You know what I mean? We're turning over what really is still at the end of the day a fish. Okay, it's a carp, it's a salmon, it's a fish. We got to stop playing like a fish defensively, especially like a dead fish.
Yeah, so as much as the defense did show some improvement in this game, we definitely played the Rams better than we did in week 1. I'm not disputing that. The numbers speak for themselves. I look at that sequence, what happened at the end of that game, it's really hard for me to envision Carroll ever really getting this.
Me too. Yeah, me too as well. If he's not changing at this point, if he's not changing after he tells you with his own words 2 years ago that he needs to change, at what point is the change going to occur? I like Carroll and what he brings in a lot of respects, and I want him to be successful here. I don't want to have to be about the answer being we got to go get somebody else to do this. But I think we've laid a pretty clear case out on a variety of different examples I can provide you in places where we're not changing, we're not updating, we're not evolving. And you cannot do that in the NFL. There are a a littered wasteland of old legendary coaches who have finished off their career by trying to run something that worked 15 and 20 years ago and thinking it still will work the same way today. It doesn't. You got to change. You got to update. It doesn't matter who you are. And right now, we're just not doing it. And on either side of the ball, that's the bottom line.
So yeah, that's kind of the big picture for me, and I kind of get the sense for a lot of Seahawks fans, this game was kind of a breaking point where I talked about this a few weeks ago. I felt people kind of sort of start to check out of this season a little bit. They were kind of just like, it's going to be another decent season. You know what? I'm kind of bored of this. Just get it over with. I barely want to watch the games. But after that one, I'm starting to get vibes of like, wake me up when we get a new coach and GM in here. Like, I think that's where this is starting to trend, you know?
I think it's going to start to get there pretty loudly, and you're right. I'm getting the same feeling from the fan base as well on this one. And as people can hear the tenor of our voice, we're understanding where it's coming from. Neither you nor I are. Let's make sure we're clear on this. The record. I'm not calling for people to be fired or let go, or I'm completely faith is gone. My faith is gone if the coaching staff doesn't change to the same things they said were required for them to change 2 years ago. I'm just holding them to account the very things that they talked about 2 years ago that they need to bring to play and bear. And I don't think that that's unfair for the fans or for you and I to try and bring that up and bring this to the spotlight to and say, hey, you said this thing a couple of years ago, you're changing. Hey, you brought this Waldron guy in to modernize your offense. Why is your offense not modernizing? Why is your defense not changing? And no one's asking these questions as far as the Seattle media is concerned. Nobody's asking Coach Carroll anything about this. So, we're left to sort of speculate and wonder here a little bit. And I'll see how the season plays out. I'll see if the team can find some adjustments in their bag. Luckily enough here, Brendan, you have the talent offensively. You have the defense that can change to a different style to find a little bit more success. Will they dial those up? Will they make those changes? But if they don't, I'm certainly not going to be going throughout this next offseason going, well, I'm sure now if we just add a guard here and another defensive lineman here, that'll be the only thing we need to do. That'll put us up over the top at that point. I'm going to have a hard time reaching that spot through the offseason if that's really what we're having to try to, sell the fan base on.
Connor Wilson, thank you for the $2. Do you guys think Carroll's age is coming into play? Kind of feel like it has to be, right? I mean, he's up there.
I think that you can be an older coach that can coach in this league and still be very successful, even at Coach Carroll's age. For instance, I think Andy Reid is that far off from an age standpoint to Coach Carroll. I think what happens is that your thinking gets a little bit old in the respect of you want to do the things, and I can't blame Carroll in certain respects that he refined this process and philosophy over years. He found the ultimate success with it in college. He's found the ultimate success with it in the pros. But it is something that has kind of had its day. It's seen its day a little bit and he needs to update on it. And then so it's become old thinking a little bit. And that's what used to get you there. You got to have a little bit of a newer thinking mindset to what can get you here now, to what can bring you success now. So I can't just describe it merely to the age, but it's more the thinking, an aged thinking on that of, what got us to the Super Bowl in 2013 will be allowed to be what brings us there again this year in basic terms. And no, it won't. You've got to do more. You've got to expand a little bit in this modern NFL. The game is always changing.
I don't know. I'm just, now's not the right time to really ask me about the Carroll stuff, I guess is the right way to put it, because this is kind of a low. This is kind of a low point. Right. Yeah. Because last year was like the new car era, right? New car smell. Everything was cool. Everything was new. Everything was fun. We were better than expected and everything was great. But I wasn't expecting a Super Bowl this year, but I do expect things to trend in the right direction. And right now they're not because, I'll just say it. I think this team is still going to make the playoffs, but that's because the NFC is going to give it to you. Like, I've been looking at these other NFC teams. I don't know who takes it from us. They're all bad, like Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Green Bay. Like, I don't see any of these teams making a late season push to take the 7 seed. So I think we get in by default. But, I don't think very many people are going to be happy about 8 and 9, one and done in the playoffs.
Well, I think, yeah, and I think that's a fair thing because you've won more games you lost this year, but you got to look at the level of competition. You've had one of the easier schedules that you've gotten to play throughout the first half of this league that you'll find across the league. I think third easiest schedule or something like that is what we've been able to play. And that does factor into a little bit of when you look at, okay, you got to play A.J. Dalton as a backup with the Carolina Panthers, who suck, in addition to now you have A.J. Dalton playing you. Josh Dobbs with the Cardinals and not Kyler Murray. Or we had Walker, PJ Walker with the Browns a couple of weeks ago. I mean, you aren't exactly going through some sort of like the best of the best in the NFL. And when you do get challenges like a Baltimore, like a Bengals team, you're not able to stand toe to toe with them. And that's kind of does stand out to me on this, that we are kind of fitting to that where we are. We are what we are a little bit at this point. And we can't just look at just the record and go, well, the record tells us, informs us what we are. We got to look at how they're winning, how they're losing. I would have, like you said, just to reiterate what you said as well, I'd be okay with this being a season we don't get to the playoffs, where we show a lot of inconsistency, but that we're showing the growth in the area of the X's and O's and adopting more modern principles when it comes to their offense and defensive approach. We're just not adopting those principles. And that's really what gets, for me, stuck a little bit extra in the craw for me on this one.
Right. Real quick, special teams. I do want to touch on this real quick because I had so many people after that game tell me you can't blame Jason Myers because it was a 55-yard field goal. I will continue to blame Jason Myers. I'm a big fan of heavy lays the crown. If you're going to get that contract, I need you to make 55-yarders. So I got no problem saying, that's the kick I expect him to make.
At what rate do you expect him to hit 55-yarders?
I'd say 70%, especially in that dome, especially in those conditions. Weather's not a factor. We know he can make it. And if we're being honest, he botched that kick. I don't think that kick makes it from 45. Like, I got high standards. If you're going to take that contract, I need you to make that kick. Sorry.
Okay, so let's just back it up real quick. You said 70, you expect a guy to be making 50-yarders at 70%.
Something like that.
Okay. So if I'm not mistaken, he made 2 50-yarders that game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's 2 of 3 from 50. So
right.
My math is 67%. What am I missing on that one?
No, you're not missing anything on that. But I need him to make that one too then and miss another one at another time is my point.
You're not kind of fitting it up to it. You set the rules on that. And now you're saying, wait, the rules don't apply. I mean, like, I think that the problem issue comes into that if we look at Jason Myers for any point of period in this game and we say that's the issue, that's the problem in the game where we lost of this, it's a little bit less of the time that we're spending on the things that are the real big overarching issues here, not just now, but as we go forward. Jason Myers,
I completely agree with that.
Jason Myers kicked 2 50-yarders in this game. Jason Myers is being asked week in and week out to kick 4 or 5 field goals and needing to make every single one of them along with every single extra point for you to win every single game. I would agree with you. And I've been inconsistent on that I expect at that price, we're getting a great kicker and that he's up at the top of the top. I'm not going to expect perfection. And I went back and reviewed and researched the numbers on this. In this league, it's about 50 to about 53%, those 50-yarders right now in this league in the modern era. They're not extra points. They're not chip shots. They're not easy field goals. And so I think you're right. I think you're 100% correct, by the way. If I'm looking for an upper level kicker or a guy that's really good, I think 70% is a really fair place to say, okay, you should be at least 15% better than the 20% better than the league average on this. But I don't think it should be 80 or 85%. And I certainly don't think it should be 100%. And I certainly don't think that we should, as a team, should be spending a whole season of leaning on our kicker to save the day week in and week out, rather than our offense finding some modichrome of consistency throughout the course of the game, which they seem inept and unable to do so game after game.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with the sentiment of don't scapegoat your kicker for the other problems on the team. I agree with that sentiment, but let's also remember, by the way, that Myers has missed a lot of kicks already this season. He was among the league leaders in misses coming into the game. So him playing really well overall in this game, which he did. You did make a couple of long kicks in this game. You're correct. I don't believe that absolves him. So don't get me wrong. He's low on the list of things that we need to talk about. But
I guess I
can't completely blow it off the way some of these people are doing it.
I get where you're coming from on it. It's just my issue with it is it was being talked about, especially in my post-game discussion, way too much. And it became a thing that people wanted to start to really lean on and become the thing that we're going to kind of get stuck on a little bit. Whereas it's this other stuff. This is a very tiny little bit of piece of the pie with it on this. And it's, again, too, comes down to it. This is a trend throughout the course of the season. Part of the reasons he's got the misses he has is because he's probably been asked to kick more field goals than just about anybody else in the sport. And that's because your offense is up there. I bet he's up there.
I mean, his percentage is like bottom. I think his percentage isn't even top 25 of all kickers.
I'm not talking about
I think.
percentage. I'm talking about his attempts.
Yeah, his attempts might be up there, but it's not like he's making a exorbitantly high amount of his attempts either. I mean, and he's missed some short ones too. He's missed 2 very makeable field goals in Detroit, which is a dome. He missed a 50-yarder against the Giants. I can't remember if they have an open air stadium or not. I think, yeah, it's Giants. I think they actually do have an open air stadium right now. The crappy MetLife. So I don't know. I know he's not having a terrible season anymore. I'm just not convinced we're getting our money's worth. I mean, that is one heck of a kicker contract we gave him. I'm just saying.
It is. No, and I expect him to do better than he's done this year. I'm not saying he's had a good year at all by any respect, but I think that we've also leaned on him way too hard this year in the expectation that he needs to sort of overcome for this offensive lack of success. And you're getting into the very outer edge of the field goal range. And you're like, okay, Jason, go out there and kick this thing that's a 50-50 kick and go out there and make it all the time. And it's like we start to get to me to a point on that where I'm not saying that he shouldn't kick better, but where we're like, that's rather than us doing that, why don't we be doing this on the other thing if we actually are able to have an offense that's one of the most talented in football and play like it?
No, I agree with that part of it. Like this is what happened in 2017, where in hindsight, all anybody remembers about 2017 is Blair Walsh.
Mm.
I get the comment so much. If Blair Walsh had made those 3 kicks, we would have been 12-4, whatever. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's that part has overridden the fact that that team, their offense took the first 20 minutes of every game off. Like they never did anything in those first 20 minutes. It completely overrid the fact that that was the year when the offensive line completely melted down. That was the last year of Tom Cable. So I get what you're saying. We shouldn't fixate on that, but I would say that there seems to be this big movement among Seahawks fans to really kind of wash over the way Myers has kicked so far this year, ignoring the 5 kicks he's missed, ignoring some of the mistakes he's made. And I'm not there, is what I'm trying to say here.
I feel you there. I think it's the part for me that's hard to get too much concentrated on that is that Myers isn't going anywhere anytime soon. There's not any money to be saved after this year by getting out from under the contract versus what you're going to have to pay to bring another contract in versus the dead money on the books because you have signed him to the deal you signed him to this offseason. So it's, he is here and he's going to be here. Maybe more so than I should be. I'm just really lasering in right now on what I'm looking at is, to me, the big, huge, major issues going on right now. We got some trash on the street, or we got an epidemic that's sweeping the lands. And to me, the epidemic that's sweeping the lands is when we look at the offensive, defensive side of the ball, just the way you're running things and your approach doesn't seem to be anything but kind of broken at this point, to my eyes.
More special team stuff, though. Dixon had another good game. I guess we can give him his. I mean, he basically operates in a vacuum from the offense and defense, right? He just does what he does when he's out there, and I'd say he's doing his thing. There was one snap in this game on a field goal attempt that I thought was a bad snap, and he actually recovered it. So
great.
Props to Dixon. This ain't your fault.
No, he's had a great season all the way through. Every game he's kicked great, and he continued to do so. Yeah, good catch on that snap. That was definitely that thing was whistling. He had to get that up and get it down. I think it was on a pretty deep kick. That was one of the 50-yarders too, so even more of a challenge because those kickers want that ball down there fast when they can because they got to load that kick up to get it there.
Yeah, love you, Michael Dixon. I'll get your jersey if you keep this up.
Let's go, Mike. Big Dixon Energy's alive and well.
Got some donos here. Teddy G, thank you for the $4.99. Getting Mariners 5 years ago vibe, where on paper we have good players, but it's just not coming together. Generally speaking, I could see the comparison, but I think the reasons are different. Because honestly, with the exception of this most recent season, I actually think Scott Service did a great job with the Mariners team since he's been here. I think they've mostly overachieved, especially the 2 years before the most recent year.
Mm-hmm.
But they couldn't get over the hump because they don't have money. That's not really what's going on with the Seahawks, right? They kind of have the opposite problem.
Yeah, I would say that's probably apropos. I think it's too, Teddy, with it. It's you have strategy being a part of, play calling and this type of stuff where coaches have so much more of an impact on what goes on the football field, both good and bad, than you have with a coach or manager in baseball, where it really is on the players to just go out there and perform. You're not really running a lot of strategy necessarily. And so that it doesn't make it a difference, especially to me, in my opinion, Teddy, because of so much of the issues here come down to your approach from the coaching angle of this, not necessarily the players or how well or not well they're playing, but some of it being down to, the way that you're setting these players up to be put in a position for either success or be put into a position for failure. And I think there's some times right now that we're setting it up for too often for failure rather than success.
Yeah. Until this most recent year, I was actually a big Scott Service fan. I actually think that overall, he's made the most of a not ideal situation in Seattle.
Yeah, I've got my issues with him on managing the bullpen sometimes because he can get a little weird with that, but he's not been the big problem. I think, like you say, it comes down to you've got teams that are spending $100 million more than the Mariners.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Like at that point, it's nobody can convince me. Well, spending money doesn't actually. But yeah, shut up. $100 million. Like what are they going to do?
Yeah. I'm not defending him for this most recent year. I thought he was bad this year, but in previous years, I actually thought he did the best that he could.
Yeah, I thought he's brought the young roster along well, and I don't have a huge problems with him necessarily. It's much more ownership based when it comes to the Mariners on what they're doing.
Nick Taylor, thank you for the $1.99. Do you agree with Brady about mediocrity in the NFL? I saw these comments earlier today. I'm sure you've seen them as well.
Yeah. I agree with Brady and what he says. Some of this can be kind of traced back a little bit to guys like Brady, though, that sort of drive this process to occur. If I was to pull on the thread, in my opinion, because if I pull on the thread, you look at the CBA negotiations, they've been the big driver for mediocrity. And the reason for that is because players in the last two CBA negotiations have made not practicing the biggest priority for them, even over getting a bigger slice of the money. And Brady has been a part of that and could have been a leader on that at that time during those CBAs to say, hey, where's the quarterbacks wield a lot of power here, and we're worried about the product of the NFL, and we're worried about where it's going. And instead, he, along with the rest of the players, all signed off on less practice time. And people talk to us about tackling all the time. Brendan, why can't we tackle better? Why can't we tackle better? It's like, well, look, it ain't getting better. It ain't getting better as a league-wide trend, because teams can't work on it. You can't be padded up in practices like you could when you used to prepare your body and to prepare yourself adequately to be able to go out there and tackle consistently and to play the game right. And that this goes on to all the details. Brady was talking about a lot of extra stuff there, but it is what it is and isn't changing anytime soon. Some of it he pointed to being rule changes that have protected players. So now you can, as a quarterback, for instance, throw over the middle in a previous play that gets your receiver killed by a headhunter over the middle like Rodney Harrison. You can't do that anymore. I don't know what can be. I don't know what can be done really about that. NFL's not going to allow that back into the game. So that is what it is. But I always laugh when the players start moaning about mediocrity, and it's like, you were there during the CBAs. You could have raised as one of the biggest voices out there that, hey, this is going to be impacted by that. It didn't take a brain surgeon to see it coming, but didn't squawk about it at that time.
Yeah, it smacks of Oscar Robertson complaining about how every point guard in the league travels every single time they get the ball. Like quiet down, dude.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't. Okay, it's like, yeah. If you guys, it ain't going to change. Players aren't going to start dialing up for more practice time. They fought so hard to have it, to not have it. So it does suck. I wish it wasn't this way, because you youngsters aren't getting the NFL product on the field that I got to grow up with, which was guys that were going out there on 2-a-days and had put their bodies through a rigorous role and then throughout training camp to get themselves ready to go. And tackling was a little more sound at that time.
Castra Solari, thank you for the $1.99. I'm 99% sure we win that game with Geno in the second half, and I agree. Like, we gained, I think, a grand total of 3 yards on the Drew Lock drives. I feel like Geno at some point slips in a field goal drive or does something that is more than 3 and out, and I do think that changes the tenor of that game.
Agreed. Yeah, I would say the same. Your offense came to a complete standstill. Can he get you 3 points better, which was the difference in the game? Yeah, I think he probably could have. So I think that's a fair way of putting it, Castra. Agreed.
Yeah, and even on that last drive, he missed that one throw to Metcalf, probably because his arm was killing him. The second throw.
Mhm.
Remember the one I'm talking about, the sideline route
Yeah.
where DK is coming back and he just completely floats it out of bounds, not even close. I'm pretty sure because his arm was hurt. So if that doesn't happen, I think we're good.
Yeah. I'd agree with you, man. I do. I'd see it as that being the same way. I mean, that was definitely where everything the whole team lost. I think you defensively lost a little bit of its stride with Gino's injury too. It seemed like it kind of affected a bit of the spirit of the defense along with it.
Brian Myers, thank you for the $9.99. Brendan, not a dome. It's covered, not closed. Wind was swirling all day. Rams fans fear their own kicker kicking that direction. I was there. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. But I didn't give my kicker that contract to do things that are easy. So heavy lays the crown, people.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, I did hear that the kicking to that side of the stadium is harder than the other side. I think doesn't Lumen Field have a side that's harder to kick at than the
It's
other?
the open-ended one. It's
Yeah,
on
the
the
open-ended side.
yeah.
Is it the north side or the which side is it?
That's the Hawks Nest side.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I get it. Not easy, but I'm not asking these guys to do things that are just easy.
Yeah, and look, he's being paid a lot. I think one or two second highest paid kicker in the sport. So I do think that that's something that you got to factor in. My whole thing with it is just that you're trying so many field goal attempts here, and I'm just checking the stats, Brandon. I was right. They're right now tied for the number 2 most field goal attempts in the entire sport. So more attempts, you're going to end up with more overall misses. I'm going to reckon to guess that Myers in his 4 or 5 years here is going to have a high in the 5-year period for the most attempted field goals this season. Will be that's my hard prediction for you on that one. And you're going to see with that more misses. And I would guess that of those, as you mentioned, he's got he's currently right now 23 of 28, 82% on the year. So so here we come down to it. On 50 range field goals, he's 3 of 6. That's where really his misses are coming from. He's missed 9 of 10 on 30 to 39, 8 of 9 on 40 to 49. It's 3 of 6. So it's the deep kicks. This is where I come to. Is there an issue with Myers? Is there a problem with him? No. Not really. Can we get out from under the contract anyway, even if there was? No, not really. I start to then just pivot and go, okay, I'd like them to kick more, but ain't getting out from under it. Ain't a super huge issue. Ain't like you mentioned Blair Walsh bad or Sebastian Janikowski kind of bad with it. We'll just have to see to where it falls out at the end of the year. But I think there are some other things. To me, that other thing, the last little part of Brendan is just that you're leaning on him so very much to win you games. And he's having to kick every kick. And you had 250 yarders you already had to make in this game. I just come down to mind, you shouldn't be asking your kicker that much. Even if you're paying him that much, you shouldn't be asking that much to lean on him to help you win a game week in and week out, as we kind of are.
Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $1.99. You guys see the missed helmet hit on last drive. Was that the one on Metcalf when he caught the ball that put us right around field goal range?
I don't know. I did not. I must have missed it.
I didn't notice too much. That's the only one I can think of. The NFL struggles with the helmet hits sometimes, I think. I think that's still something they're trying to figure out.
NFL struggles with a lot of calls, Brendan. This game was another one, as we've said through so many of the games this year. Just the penalty situation and the calls and how the game's called is pretty sus. Pretty sus, Daniel.
Yeah, we got to spend a little bit of time talking about that, right? It was too big a part of this game for us not to.
I think we did, yeah.
I mean, that game was rigged. Let's just start there. That game was rigged, straight up. I was not happy. I mean, I watched it in a bar with 100 other people, so I didn't get the greatest possible look at some of these plays. But the one that really stands out is the PI in the end zone where Puka, I think it was it Puka? Trips?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was Puka. Trips, and the referee, who is not even the one with the good angle on the play, throws the flag. And it turns what would have been a field goal, because that was third down, into a touchdown. And who knows how that ends up changing the way the rest of the game flows. So, yeah, there's that. There's the lack of any kind of roughing the passer call on Aaron Donald when he goes high on Gino. Probably one or two other things as well. Those are the two big ones that really stand out, though. So It's another game in LA where you swear there's something weird going on here, except the Rams should be having games rigged against them this year so they can get Caleb Williams. Like, the referees didn't get the updated note. Like, this is the year the Rams are supposed to lose every game.
Yeah, or maybe they're just wanting Seattle to stack up losses so they're not in the mix at the end of the year to be part of the mix. I don't know. I'm not a big guy to look at penalties, Brendan. I hate referencing it, but when it becomes egregious, you have to do so. And I find myself week after week throughout games this season going, when is this whole thing going to be? And it's kind of important, I think, for my bottom line on this, which is that I'm seeing this week after week. It's a commonality with Coach Carroll teams that they don't tend to be the most disciplined. This year, it seems to be really driving in an extreme manner. This week seemed to drive in an extreme manner. It's one thing if we're going to get the calls against us and we're going to get more calls against us and it's going to happen week in and week out, then you're going to add on key moment ticky-tack calls like that Puka call there in the moment on top of it. And it just starts to make people kind of spaz out a little bit and get pissed. And I think rightfully so. I don't know when this whole, it's supposed to be a regression to the mean if they're going to tell us that it isn't a matter. No, nothing's rigged. Nothing's this, nothing. Okay, fine. So at what point in the season is it that there's going to be a regression to the mean where some of this crap balances out, where I don't look at it every week going, we got to be better than this team and 10% better because of the refs? Which one? Just, educate me on which game that's going to be where that actually gets to come back into play and I get to feel that effect. And then I'll be like, okay, yeah, that is the thing that balances out. But I'm not seeing it yet this year. I can't think to a game of like, wow, we got so many more calls than the other team did in this game. There's some calls we'll get, but when it comes down to the balance game of who's ending out with more calls at the end of the day, when it does, I just more often not find myself going, it's this way. And Brendan, I think it's important to pay attention to this, not just to bitch and moan about the NFL having it out for us, but if it's not about it being a rigged thing, then it is about us being one of the more undisciplined, if not the most undisciplined teams in all of football. And if that's the case, that doesn't bode really well when we push this discussion forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that needs to be the main topic of conversation here, because my thing is the Seahawks had 12 penalties on Sunday, right? It was 12.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say that 4 of them were BS. Let's just say, and that's not the actual number. I don't know what the actual number is. But let's say that we're saying 4 of them are BS. Well, then you've still got 8. And 8 penalties per game would still put you on pace to lead the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
So with those BS penalties or not, other teams are still going to laugh at you when you try to bring this stuff up, because they're like, well, what about the other 8? What about the other 8 where clearly what's-his-face jumped off sides, or clearly what's-his-face false started, or clearly this, or clearly that? And that's the part that's bugging me, because once upon a time, the Seahawks led the league in penalties pretty much every year, and it was okay because our defense was dominant. They made up for it. This defense is below average. It's 19th in the league right now, and we're still leading the league in penalties. So there's something off in the approach that this team is taking with penalties. I do think that Carroll is one of these coaches who doesn't think penalties are that big of a deal, and maybe that's part of it. But he said this week, I pulled everybody aside in Wednesday in practice, and I said, these penalties, doing things to try to crack down on the penalties. And then he said at halftime, we did the same thing. We got too many penalties, guys. We need to stop with the penalties. And it didn't take. So then I'm like, okay, is it the players now? Where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start at that point if you can't get your message across that's important? You do not have the ability to teach it then at that point? Do you have the wrong players in-house to listen to your messaging with it? And we're not merely bad at penalties right now. It gets worse the more you look at the list. Because if you look at a couple of the teams that are in the number 2 and the number 3 pole position there on the list of total penalties right now, they're teams that haven't had their bye yet.
Yeah.
So you have more penalties than them, and you have one less football game that you've played than they've played. So it is a big issue. It's been a problem with Carroll throughout. If you're getting the other plus side with his coaching game, with the returns to offset it, like you talked about on those old defenses, that's one thing. When there isn't the offshoot of the return, but yet the still extreme that exists, when we come down to, again, talking about maybe a commonality on this stream, Brendan, of, okay, I have an issue here. And you may be, as a general fan, saying, don't have an issue with this. Okay. You may be thinking that. How do I have faith that this will be fixed into the future? How do I have faith that Coach Carroll's teams in the future aren't going to be held back by being ridiculously undisciplined as they have been here this year? Will it just magically self-correct itself? I have a hard time seeing that. It seems like a part of what you get with Coach Carroll, good or bad, that he's going to bring to play no matter what. And that kind of sucks for me when we're already starting to stack up so many little negatives on this side of the chart that are holding us back. Lack of complex offense, lack of complex defense, predilection and fear of blitzing, soft zone defenses, running game hammering A and B gap runs, lack of use of pre and post snap motion. Just like you keep stacking and you start stacking so much stuff in this other category. At what point does that start to overwhelm whatever good you're doing on the other side of it? I think it's one of the key questions I wonder about this team as we go into the future here.
Yeah, because I mean, I think like in 2021 and 2020, we didn't have that many penalties for whatever reason. Those 2 years, we actually did a pretty good job. But most years, you're among the league leaders. Like last year, we were sixth. And I understand that these 2 years in isolation, you could probably say, oh, we have a young team. We have a lot of young players. They commit penalties. But that's not the case with some of the old Legion of Boom teams. Those teams had veterans all over the place. In fact, we barely had any young players because we didn't have very many draft picks because we kept trading them for veterans.
Yeah.
And this is just Pete's style to, not make a big deal out of the penalties. But it doesn't seem like that's working all that well anymore because that stuff is starting to cost you games. And I mean, I don't think the Tom Coughlin method of coaching works anymore, but I need something in the middle here. I think we need to start taking this a little more seriously.
Agreed. If it's a place the staff looks for maybe to find an adjustment this offseason that's a clear and readily one that they can start to maybe look to address. And I don't know, maybe they don't have the answers. If he's telling you I'm trying all I can try, it's one of those points we get with Carroll, as he said over the couple of years, like, I don't know. I've done everything I know to do. I got nothing else I can do. Message just doesn't seem to be resonating. Okay, well, if that's the case, that's the case, I guess. But it is something that will be something that holds us back this year and holds us back into the future. And it's hard for me, like you said, to blame it simply on youth when it has been such a commonality of Coach Carroll, maybe not to this extreme of degree, but has been a commonality of his going back for years now.
Let's see here. Connor Wilson, thank you for the $2. Wish you two could have a real convo with Carroll one-on-one. Well, if it was us two, it wouldn't be one-on-one. It would be two-on-one, right?
That's right. We'd be ganging up. I would love to do so as well, Connor. It drives me crazy, and I know why the media doesn't do it. I'm not going to try to give them a hard time because I think that it's a thing of there's been some sort of thing done in the background where the team has come to the media staff and said, don't ask tough questions here or you'll not be given access. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. These guys never ask anything that approaches a tough question of Coach Carroll. And I would love to have a chance to talk to him as well. I think that I can probably read into a little bit of what his answers are on the bottom line, which is it's the old Popeye. I am what I am, what I am, what I am. And what I mean by that is that he has a philosophy he carefully built 25 years ago heading to USC. He put a lot into that thought process, and then he had the ultimate success 2 times over on two different levels of competition, the ultimate success. And so that's born into it, an undying faith within that philosophy, even if there are things that tell you need to start to adjust some things within this. I don't believe that he would tell us he's willing to do so, that he has trust that this will sort of double back around and sort of just somehow kind of regression the mean. I don't know, Brennan. He just tell us that he has faith in the process. It'll work. It'll eventually work.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how else to put this, but this Seahawks fan base has shown that if you don't give them something worth watching, they will find something better to do. And to that point, Nordcam posted on social media earlier today. I don't know if you saw this or not. I think it was Facebook. I'm not sure. But he posted, I'm surprised that there are so many tickets available for this Thanksgiving game against the 49ers still.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that, and it immediately just kind of popped in my head like, oh, I think I know what's going on. I think people are like, they know what's going to happen. They're afraid of what's going to happen. And they're kind of, what's that word I always use? Checking out, or phrase that I always use, checking out. Like, they're not going to accept a team that loses 5 games in a row. And to a certain extent, I think a lot of Seahawks fans are kind of just waiting for the 5-game losing streak because that's where it looks like this is headed with these games coming up. And these fans, they're not going to react well to it. They are going to find better things to do, and I can't blame them. Like life's short.
I don't think you can't lie to the average fan in this modern age. And I think that I'm not saying all the people will agree with what we've thought in our chat or in the fan base, but there's a big, huge contingent of people in the fan base that are feeling this way. And I've started to kind of arrive there recently in my thinking and being wanting to give the time in this rebuild process to play out and see how it's going to go. But there were people even at the beginning of this rebuild process that were out and at their wits' end when it came to some of the things that they were seeing, some of the very things I'm talking about now in today. These people were talking about 2 years ago that they were tired of seeing. And so to have people arrive at that state where they're a little bit exasperated, I get it. A lot of people love to just cling to the fact that, oh, we've been to the playoffs so many times in the past 10 years. You have not been an elite team in 10 years. That's just the bottom line. You have not been close to an elite team in 10 years. That's the bottom line. And not a lot of coaches in this NFL get to have 10 years of not being elite and get to sort of just guide their way through that and just sort of have a blank check of time in order to eventually maybe potentially figure it out. And so people getting jumpy and touchy on this and saying, I've kind of seen enough of the same story playing out. You've seen it play out a lot of different times over. That's part of my frustration here. You may be one of those people out there going, why are you guys so frustrated? Why are you so out? It's like, it's not just about this year and right now. We cover these teams closely and have been for years. It's seeing the same thing raising its ugly ass head once again and not seeing the team willing to even acknowledge it, much less take steps to fix it. That's really where the frustration comes in from.
Yeah, and look, I want to let this regime handle this era because they've started it. It's gotten off to a good start. They brought in a lot of young, talented players. I would love to let this regime finish what they started because the start's been pretty nice, better than we thought it was going to be. But at the same time, if I continue to see the same problems that we're talking about throughout most of this show, I'm not going to believe that era is going to reach its maximum potential. I think it's going to kind of top out pretty quickly here.
Agree.
And, I think that something, it needs to be kept in mind here that at this point, especially, Pete Carroll and John Schneider are separate entities. They are very different people who have very different wants and desires. And it's very possible a lot of these positive things that are happening right now with the team that people attribute to Carroll are actually Schneider. And Schneider now has freedom to actually act on his own now. Like, it's hard to know exactly what's going on behind closed doors here. But to me, a lot of the things going on with this team that are objectively good are coming from John.
Yeah, I think especially when you talk about the drafting over the 2 years, because John's referenced the change from going from value to need. And I would love to be able to ask John on a lie detector test, why were you driven to draft for need for those many years from 2015 to 2020? What was the driving force behind that? Was that Coach Carroll in your ear saying, take LJ Collier, get Jordan Brooks? Or was that you actually making those selections? I'd love to know it. But yeah, I have confidence in the talent this team's put out there. The team has set up the stage to be able to go make a run and become a contending unit. But it takes all of the parts working together to be a contender in this National Football League. It is a sport of parity. It is a sport of fierce competition. And if you are leaving advantages off of the table that you can readily and easily take advantage of, and that every one of your other competition out there is taking advantage of, doesn't matter how much of the talent you stack on the other side, you're not taking full well advantage of all the things you can be to be a great team.
Radu Turkan, thank you for the $4.99. What does it take for someone to grow a pair and confront Seahawks coaches to wake TF up? Are these reporters even fans, or are they scared for their job? Well, Joe Fan kind of tried to do that, and he doesn't have that job anymore.
There you go. There you go. I don't know if it's because Joe was asking those questions, but I think that they are scared for and I can only read into this by what I've seen from the years of watching them and the questions that they ask and the underhanded softball questions that come one after the other. And I think that there's probably somebody with the PR staff with the Seahawks went to the media unit at one point with Coach Carroll, and just after he won the Super Bowl, and they're like, hey, you know what? He's won a Super Bowl here. He doesn't feel like he has to answer jack diddly squat to you guys ever again, ever. So why don't you keep the questions in the right kind of mind, in the right kind of space, or you're not given the access. I don't know why otherwise, because as a reporter, it's supposed to be your job to speak to power. That is what you're supposed to do. Not that you coddle power, not that you massage power, not that you pet power, but that you question it, and that's your job. And the Seattle media does not want to do that. And I don't really understand why. Why be a reporter if you're not going to do what you need to do as a reporter to do your job? Is it just because you wanted to just type cute little columns that barely anybody reads, or you're like, come on, I don't get it. And there are other reporters out there in this country and other cities and other places that will ask those questions. Ours just happens to decide to take that left turn and say, no, we don't feel like asking anything tough. We don't want to make the old man mad.
Mm-hmm.
So be it.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't need the reporters to ask those questions. I need those questions to be addressed behind closed doors so that come game day, it doesn't happen anymore. And I'm not seeing that either. Like, that's more important. So,
Sure. Yeah.
I'd settle for that happily.
Yeah, I would too. I don't need absolutely the reporters to do. I'd like to at this point because it's like the thing no one's talking about outside of guys like us on maybe online. But it's not anybody that's talking about it in the places to where it maybe has an actual tangible deal. At least when a reporter's asking it, it's being brought out into the general hemisphere of and sort of like this is a real thing occurring, as opposed to just, well, you guys just missed it this week. How do you get back this next week to get it happen? Those kind of questions.
Do you know who Jared Stanger is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's one of the Seahawks guys on Twitter. He's not like a reporter. He's not like an inside info guy. He's just somebody. He's mostly a draft guy, but he's a Seahawks guy on Twitter pretty much all year round. And after the game on Sunday, he made this one tweet. He made several tweets. One of the tweets he made was to his followers, just, I really want people to be more open to the possibility that Pete is not an elite coach anymore. And the striking thing about that language is that from his perspective, he is talking to people who are under the assumption that Pete is this amazing coach still. And he's like trying to introduce the possibility it's not true anymore for the first time. Mm-hmm. Like these things that have been bugging us for a long time, he's basically just slowly starting to bring it to his followers' attention. Like, hey, take a look at this, take a look at this, take a look at these results, take a look at those results. Like, maybe not, maybe he's not what you think he is. So that does go to show that to a lot of the fans, I'm sure Pete is still kind of immortal.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it a bit with Russell here too, with the folks at the end, that any criticism of him, there's no way you can criticize him. He's the best quarterback in the sport. Shut up, And I think Jared definitely understands that. I mean, I've even seen a couple of comments as we've been doing this. They come in, they get sensitive about it. I'm at the place where I don't really care if there is sensitivity in the fan base on this. We tend to have a thing with us in our Seahawks fandom. In our nature, and it's probably a nature of almost fandoms, where we have these sacred cows that we like to build up. And I don't really operate from the fact there is a sacred cow. And I don't also operate from the fact that Carroll should have a blank check to basically decide when he gets to leave here. Is that 2030, 2035, and we'll just be a middling one and done team throughout that time? And he won us a Super Bowl back 20 years ago, so he's earned that right to do that. That doesn't add up to me. That doesn't track for me. And if Coach Carroll is indeed an elite coach, then why has it taken him 10 years, especially with how much control he's had from a personnel standpoint through a lot of that 10-year period? Why has he not made an elite team during that time?
Right.
Don't you eventually have to build an elite team to be an elite coach? And if 10 years goes by, that seems like that's a long time to still be calling yourself an elite coach when you're not building an elite squad. So that doesn't really add up anymore. We're not in 2012. We're not in 2001 out there at USC. We're in 2023, almost 2024. And it's been a long time. And, I can't get there, but I get where Jared's come from on, because there is certainly, and I know there will be with us doing this stream today. There'll be people put comments and get super in their feelings about us bringing up these topics, but we're going to keep it true and real with you guys. And when there's good things to talk about, that's what we really feel. And when there's things that we got to talk about that are unfortunate and difficult topics, it's because that's what really needs to be discussed. And it's where we think the heart of this is at. We could be wrong, but we're always trying to be at least truthful from it. We're not going to be truthful with you guys if we just cover up these mistakes and these errors we're seeing and act like they don't exist, kind of like the Seattle media.
Pretentious Cameron, thank you for the member message. Bring back the 3 tight end sets. JSN can shine next year. Yeah, there was, admittedly, we don't really use the tight ends very much, even when they're on the field, but there was a little bit of a lack of Disley and Parkinson in this most recent game in terms of snaps. I did notice. Yeah.
And Disley's actually rounding himself out to having a pretty good overall year again this year. A guy I know a lot of people jump at the bit, Brendan, to cut away this offseason as being one of the guys at the front that we should look to cut to save money, but who has been a guy that does play very consistent football out there. I think he had maybe a bad drop the last couple of weeks that probably is going to stand out in some people's minds. Yeah. But Yeah, I think that the JSN pick, and I think he's going to be a good player for us for years to come. But I think his selection also was a bit of the part of what's thrown our offense a bit off the tracks here this year a little bit, and leaning away from what we do good to trying to acclimate and build to what Waldron wants to go and get to. And it's left you in a little bit of an in-between place, Cameron, as far as that's part of that lack of identity and being this and being that and being everything to everyone everywhere a little bit offensively without ever having that identity or something that you can call upon and rely upon for success.
Gammon Brown, thank you for the $5. 49er fan here. I was a huge Charbonnet fan coming out of UCLA. Why is he not used in play action more? How much will game plan change for Thursday?
Thank you, Gammon. It's good to see you back in the chat. He was in there earlier on an earlier stream with me today. So thank you, Gammon.
Yeah, so the play action part, let's start with that. Why is he not used in play action more?
Well, and Gammon, it's going to be a common theme here, man. I'm not trying to sound like a one-trick pony or a one-note musician, but unfortunately, there's things that work on this team that the team runs away from inexplicably. And so be it 2 and 3 tight end sets like the previous poster just mentioned, Gammon, that we've been very good at and efficient at, especially from an EPA standpoint. Yet we always want to lean away from it to try to get to the 3 wide receiver sets in JSN. Geno Smith has been absolutely nails out of play action this year. Yet you don't run a high preponderance of play action this year. I don't really know why. It's even like Brendan talked about Gammon earlier. We'll even be in these 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 3s. Plays where you like just use the play action to kind of get them to bite and hold. You know, even if you want to really throw here, at least it's a no-brainer to work the play action in because you're going to get the linebackers to bite up. You're going to get them to take that false step forward, and then you can hit a little. You'll have a little bit more opening to hit your pass. Instead, you'll see them just do blind dropbacks on a 3rd and 2 or 3, giving the defense all the indication that it's a pass post snap instantaneously. Charbonnet could be really good off of the play action for sure. And he has found a fitted role here, Gammon, where at least now he's become more of the 3rd down back for us and found his footing there to where, you know, that's definitely a place he's blocks well and he's got good hands out of the backfield. But
to my recollection, we had play action on the Metcalf touchdown in this game where the play action clearly made the safety step up and Geno was able to fit it where the safety would have been. I think. Yeah.
I don't get why every time they go to a Brennan, and it's one of those stats they'll even show on the telecast through the game that you'll see where we really run it well, really run it effectively. We just run away from it all the time. And I don't have I usually have an explanation on some of the stuff, Gammon, but we do things that kind of defy explanation because it doesn't add up and make sense. If you have something that's working from a football standpoint, defensively or offensively, this one thing that for us is working. You kind of would hammer on it until it starts to find a little bit less success, right? The returns start to be lightened up. You wouldn't just bail off of it as it's giving you those full turns of success. Oh, we're blitzing and we got a sack on it. Oh, let's stop blitzing. But we just got a sack on it. You know, we ran play action. Geno's got a perfect quarterback rating. He's thrown for 140 yards in this game and a touchdown off back of play action. Yeah, but let's not go to it. It's inexplicable. And I don't know why. I'm not really sure. And I wish I had a better explanation for it. I just don't. How much will the game plan change Thursday? I don't think the game plan is changing. They haven't changed the game plan so far this year, Gammon. So I don't think it's going to change this week. You know, we'll come out with a scripted 15 to 20 plays that'll probably ran pretty well against your Niners. We'll probably cut out a touchdown early and maybe a field goal. And then you'll start to see the offense taper off and it'll start to become more stagnate and less of motion throughout the course of the game. You'll see less post-snap motion throughout the course of the game. They'll start taking more deep shots over the course of the game where it's all or nothing. If I'm making a prediction about how the offense plays out as we go forward, that's my prediction because that's how the offense has played out through most of these games and the styling and their approach to it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what else I could expect right now. John Stillwell, thank you for the member message. Hi, guys. Hope you are having a good night and good day
John?
On Thursday. What's up, John? Good to see you.
It's good to see you in the house, John. We're doing great tonight, man. Hope you're doing well, too.
Hope you are doing well, John. Coda Dad, thank you for the $14 Canadian. Most teams slowly roll their playbooks out over a season. Do the Seahawks do that? And if so, do you expect to see anything new or different against the 49ers? Interesting one.
I'd love to believe that they've just kind of been sitting on some plays in the playbook this year, Codad, where they're like, let's just get to that 4-game stretch and then we'll really let them see what we got. I mean, it's possible. Certainly it's possible. Anytime now that they want to start rolling those magical plays out. They're free too, like it's we don't have to hold on any longer at this point.
But like
Uh,
there's no reason to hide play action. It's not like nobody ever runs play action and you're gonna whip it out in game 11. People are gonna like, whoa, look at all that play action.
I agree.
What is this? It's like, did you ever see a semi-pro with Will Ferrell when the guy
Mhm.
dunks for the first time ever and everyone's
Yeah.
like,
What was that? What was that?
yeah,
That's not legal. Yeah, that's not legal. He could do that. No, he can't.
yeah, it's not like that. Everybody does play action. Like we don't need anything crazy on this offense. Just do things that make sense.
I think Kodad, the way he puts this is the best way is that you aren't needing to do anything crazy offensively. It's that you just need to lean on what's working well for you. 2 and 3 tight end sets, it's working well. Lean on it. Stop making everything in the running game about hammering up through the A and B gap. It's really A gap and then just a little bit of B gap runs. It's really those two that you're going at. It's including more of the outside zone runs so defenses can't clog the middle of your line and close those holes up, tighten their splits and close those holes up. Finding more of a utilization in the horizontal running attack. I don't think, to me, those are secret special plays you have. It's just utilizing all of the ways to attack a defense, which we just don't do. We utilize the method of hitting A gap runs. We utilize the method of hitting 9 routes over the top and deep balls. We'll do little check down throws as well out into the flat, but it's not a lot else other than that. As Brendan talked about earlier, we certainly don't look to the middle of the field. We certainly don't look really intermediate. That's not really in our bag very often either.
Right. So I seriously doubt that's going to be the thing that saves us this week against the Niners. And yeah, I would assume that if there was anything special in this playbook, we would have seen it against, like, wouldn't you do that against the Ravens maybe? Like that's a really good defense you could use special plays against.
I would have thought you would have done against the Rams, man. I don't think you came into this game. I know they managed I think the management of the rotations wasn't necessarily an indicator that they were just so confident they were going to get this win, Brendan. I think it was really just that Pete Carroll's like, holy hell, we got 3 games in 15 nights. And
Yeah.
that probably freaked the coaching staff out to where they're like, we got to manage the hell out of this. But that would have been the game after the embarrassing loss in week 1 to me, that you're going to bring out whatever special stuff you have. You mentioned already the way the mechanics of this play out, losing this Rams game to then go into this Niner attack, that it becomes kind of the must win for you, because the losing then of the Niner game this week isn't big. That's the win you need to go get, and the one
Right.
that becomes to me important. So I can't quite see them holding back either on that one.
All right, so I think we've talked about everything we need to talk about this week. That was not very much fun, but it had to be done. And it's always more fun when we can do it with a partner. So, Brandon, I want to thank you for coming out and doing this tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate all the donations too. Kodad, I hope we got you did a $14 donation. Let's make
Yeah,
sure
yeah, that
I
was the one we just did.
I wish I had, let me just give him one last note because he did put a drop of $14 dono. I do hope that they do try to do some new stuff this week, Kodad. I do think if you came out in this game and you ran 5-6 fly sweeps in this game, I think that you would find 35, 40 yards on the ground to be had. And especially with having Charbonnet there as the AB gap runner that can really test that Niners, defense inside, where they might want to lean a little bit in there to those runs where you can really take advantage of that. I would be hammering those kind of runs. I'd be utilizing as much of the intermediate stuff as I can, giving Geno some easy completions early on to work off of in this upcoming game. But it's really just kind of leaning into some of the things that you haven't established as much. And I don't think you're hiding it in your back pocket. Just lean on those things you haven't done as much. Intermediate passing, ground game, working horizontally a little bit more, fly sweeps, maybe working in the screen game a little bit more extra to try to dial back those pass rushers for the Niners this week a bit. I think there's certainly a game plan that you can kind of construct to be able to find some success, but it will require them to go in a different direction, Kodad, than they've gone this year so far.
Right. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Kodad, for the donation as well. I appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. So thank you everybody in the chat who showed up tonight. Had a good night of attendance. Thank you to everyone who watches these shows every week. We will be doing another one very soon here because of the quick turnaround. So I will see you guys. It's tomorrow, right? We're doing it tomorrow because the game's on Thursday.
I believe we're setting up for tomorrow. So we'll be doing the preview game tomorrow, preview show.
Right. Well, we will see you guys tomorrow, and we're going to talk about this Thanksgiving Niners game. But for now, we're still chewing on the last little bits of that Rams loss because I mean,
I'm spitting
happens.
out. I gotta get it out of my mouth. I need some water. How do I wash this out? It's the taste. Yeah. I don't like the taste in this one, Brendan.
When none of us do, but there's another game coming up soon, and we'll be here to talk about it just the same as we were talking about this one. So thank you, everybody. And I mean, look, there's a chance things get worse before they get better here in Seattle, but we're still going to be here. We're all still fans. We're all still invested. We're all still going to see this one through. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I can't turn away. I can't turn away no matter how ugly it might get. So I will be here for every
And you
game,
never know.
win or lose.
And you never know.
Maybe things go the other way. So for now, we're just going to leave it with this, and we're going to get out of here. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.